Okay.
All right, so we can get started. Trina, why don't we start with the landmarks application?
Okay, who's here to present that? The Williamsburg Houses.
You have Matthew Rooney from RDC Development, the developer who is partnering with NYCHA on the Williamsburg Houses project. You have Kenneth Pye, a project manager from RDC, and the architect on the project, Brian Newman from Newman Design.
Does someone want to share their screen and take us through a presentation?
Sure, I can. This is Brian Newman speaking. I can share my screen if you just give me.
Okay, Marie, can you make that happen?
Yeah, I need access. Yes.
How great that there's funding for these windows. That's amazing.
Yes, definitely. We'll be focusing on the windows today. Down the line, there will be a separate application for the rest of the plans for the site. But we are very excited that we're able to work with NYCHA to fully redevelop the Williamsburg Houses site.
Such amazing buildings.
Can you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Matt, would you like me to get started? Or do you want to do a little intro?
Yeah, just as a quick intro, I guess. This is part of the rental assistance demonstration program. It's a public-private partnership that allows public housing to access Section 8, which is a more stable funding platform. It also allows them to be able to really leverage debt on these properties, which in turn gives NYCHA and the buildings the ability to actually go through the renovations that are so desperately needed throughout a lot of NYCHA housing. This is one site of many that is going through a similar process. But of course, you really can't redo Williamsburg Houses without looking at the historic context. So today, Brian's going to present on the windows and explain the plans for the windows at the site. But further down the road, we'll be presenting a fully comprehensive plan for the full rehabilitation of the site, including interiors and exteriors.
Right. Thank you, Matt. My name is Brian Newman from Newman Design. We're the project architects. And as Matt just touched upon, today we're focusing specifically on the window replacement, but we will be coming back to present a comprehensive package on the entire site, site amenities, improvements to the remainder or the other aspects of the buildings, the commercial components, and the interiors as well. We've been working directly with New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission, as well as State Historic Preservation. So as we go through the process, they sort of quote unquote sign off in stages, if you will, and they've asked us to sort of put a pin in the master plan, the overall aspects of the project that I was just mentioning, and push forward right now on the windows. And then right after that, hopefully we'll be right back to present the rest of the balance of the scope of the project. So as I said today, we're focusing on the windows on the Williamsburg Houses. Very special project, quite unique. One of the first planned affordable housing complexes in the country. 1936, it was started to be designed by a committee of architects, some of them brought over from Europe. The presidents were involved. It was quite, the president was involved. It was quite the happening, if you will, at the time. So not only is there history behind that, but then there's architectural significance. As many of you know, they're 4-story buildings. There's 20 buildings on the site. It's approximately 25 acres of land. They've sort of created 4 super blocks, if you will, in this area. You can see in the photos right in front of you, the buildings were also rotated on a 15-degree angle compared to the street. So it really opened up the site a lot, opened up the street walls, brings natural light and air into the site and throughout the project. That was sort of unique at the time, to say the least. Another unique architectural feature are the windows at that time. And so the windows were, okay, I'm just take a step back. So on the north, you're bound by Mauger Street to all the way to the east is Bushwick, and to the west, Leonard, to the south, Scholes. So it's these four super blocks that I was mentioning, and it's the 20 buildings. There's approximately 7 building types throughout. This is an example of one of the building types. You can see this is somewhat of an H shape, if you will, if you rotate it on the side. Very unique buildings. And we have here, we've done a lot of research with our historical consultant, as well as Landmarks has great records on this building as well. And you can see here from the 1930s photos, the windows themselves were these steel frame, almost warehouse style, industrial casement type or windows, outswinging. A lot of light and air into the units themselves. So similar to the site, how they wanted to draw out light and air in, same idea with these units. They have these beautiful corner windows, which you probably see down in the bottom corner here of the bottom left photo, and even on the right side there. And we're really trying to work at preserve that look or restore that look. For those of you who know the site currently, it went through a very substantial renovation in the 1980s. And that's what we see here today. And those original steel windows were replaced with the aluminum 1/1 double hung windows, sort of a current affordable housing type standard window. Really lost a lot of its character at the time when it underwent this renovation and these repairs. So we were able, through a lot of research, we were able to locate the 1980 window replacement drawings, so we can start to see and unravel how some of it was originally installed. There's approximately 8,000 windows in the complex, and unfortunately, of those 8,000 windows, only approximately 350 windows still remain. And those windows, generally speaking, are the basement windows themselves. All the apartment windows have been replaced. In doing some of the research, we've also been able to locate the original catalogs from the steel window. This Detroit Steel Company, Fenestra Windows, was the original manufacturer. And in doing so, we were able to sort of piece back together with the photos and these, what the extrusions and what the windows were originally intended to be, or what the original installation was. We have some of the original elevations as well, to give you some context. Here you can quickly just see like the existing condition of the double hung over what we would propose as a replacement window. And I'll get more in detail in a moment. And then you could see the existing windows, those 350 steel frame windows, are really these sort of small areaway cellar windows that are still remaining. So what we've done here, we've recreated based off those historic photos, the drawings, the installation drawings from the 80s, and the Fenestra catalog. We sort of recreated the window, if you will, that would have been constructed in, say, the 1936 to 1938 time when this was built. And what we've done is created what we feel is a pretty close replica to what the original intention was. Going back to those original sight lines with the multiple mutton bars, the sort of square daylight opening, and then keeping the casement operation as opposed to the current double hung style windows. Now, one obvious difference you'll see is right here in the center, this AC sleeve and louver. if you've noticed, and part of the reason why in the 80s they went to those double hungs, window AC units are obviously a very common element in today's day and age. Majority of tenants have them, and we needed to make provisions for that. It's easy to put the double hung back in and put the AC unit back through the window, but we lose any historical preservation, any historical language of the original intent. We researched a number, and I can get into that towards the end, a number of different options on how to sort of preserve the original intent, but yet meet today's standards, not only from an energy efficiency standpoint, but also from tenants' requirements. What is the real world of the tenant's usage today? And so we need to address that AC sleeve or that louver. So what we've done is we've created this fixed sleeve and louver inside the unit that would be manufactured by the same company that manufactures the windows themselves. It would all be manufactured at the same facility. It would be painted and finished at the same time. And the louver on the outside would also be an architectural louver that would be finished and painted the same finish as the aluminum. So you're not going to see these mixing and matching of different AC units hanging out of windows, or different stamped back ends of air conditioners that would have maybe different louvers. This will give it a nice, clean, uniform finished look. There's a few different window types. We went through about 4 of them here, but again, you can see the idea, the general idea of just replicating that steel frame window with the multiple lights, keeping that as well. This is that C type, or that corner window I was mentioning before, where we keep the glass at the corner. This and this are the matching corner, and we push the sleeve over tight against the brick, so we can really leave that glass corner exposed there and unencumbered by that air conditioning unit. Here's another type as well, D type. We get into the extrusions, or the actual pieces, and you can see here, these were some of the original details that we're able to, again, research and recreate from the Fenestra catalog specifically. And you can see here are some of the details that we're replicating, whether it's the mutton bar or the heads of the windows. And we're very, very close, in some cases exact. Original horizontals are 7/8 each. Here, you know, depending on the final installation, we're within small tolerances of 1/8 of an inch of the actual extrusions themselves. The method of attachment, we're still working on the final details, both with landmarks and state, but we're presenting here, at least the extrusions are almost exact, or as close as we think you're probably going to get to those 1938 steel windows. Here, obviously, we're presenting aluminum, thermally insulated, thermally broken window frames that meet today's energy codes. We've also had another consultant, Keystone Preservation, do a color analysis where they take color chips and they bring it under microscopes to get us the correct match of those original colors. Luckily, as I mentioned before, there were approximately 350 original basement windows remaining. So through their analysis, we were able to get an exact, or as close as we think, current match with today's finishes. So the precedents that we used to come up with this AC, as I was mentioning before, was actually given to us by landmarks in going back and forth and really trying to work through this solution or this criteria that we need to provide ACs to the tenants, but we also want to honor the original casements. They had a project back in 2017 on 44th Street. It's called the Beaux-Arts building. Very similar Fenestra building, originally from the 30s. And this was the after, if you will, where they created and built an aluminum frame window that's a steel frame replacement, and then have the window, the AC louver and sleeve pre-manufactured by that window manufacturer. and all fabricated at the same time. You can start to see, and I'll actually try to zoom in a little bit on this photo. You can start to see the corner windows here, right, would replicate something very similar to what we have in our current condition with the AC unit slid over here. And then you can see the uniformity and the sort of clean lines that the prefabricated or shop fabricated box and louver represent. And I'm sorry, one other thing, you can see the casement windows in some of these in the open position. Again, mimicking what we saw back in the 1930s. So I don't mean to make everyone dizzy zooming in and out. So just quickly, we wanted to show you some of the history of our research. We started with double hungs and tried to add divided lights back in to mimic what was going on in the current field. But we just felt it was a fail, quite honestly. It just wasn't honoring what was originally there. So as we progressed through, we tried some additional casements with some additional manufacturers. These we felt were too thick. You can see the amount of aluminum here. We felt it just became a little too dense with this particular manufacturer and some of the hardware that was on it. Here's another possible solution where we had some casements and possibly a floor-mounted AC with a louver. We thought this looked a little funny in the overall configuration, so we continued and tried to develop that further. So then we put an AC unit back into this, and then that gets us to the sort of inconsistency, if you will, that I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, where you'll have multiple units that are by different manufacturers because the tenants can provide their own. The profiles could be different, the colors could be different, and the louvers on the outside could be very inconsistent. So that's how we ended up where we are today. And as I mentioned, Landmarks was, I think, very happy with the effort and the direction that we've come to in the place where we are with this current aspect of the project. Again, keep in mind this is just one small aspect of this much larger overall arching scope that we'll be coming back and presenting the remainder of the improvements we'll be doing, as I mentioned earlier. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll give it back to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it's pretty amazing what you're doing to bring back, to be able to do that, to be able to restore these buildings. I do have a question about the corners of the windows. And is there a drawing that shows the corner and specifically how the masonry above it relates to the placement of the window? Because if you look at the historic pictures, there looks like there's a recess of the windows in from the masonry of the building itself.
Yes, so building C, window type C, this is the corner. I don't know if you can start to see in the top right corner here, okay? All the windows have the existing precast eyebrows, if you will. The slab edge is cantilevered out and exposed. So building C, we start to indicate that right here in the drawing.
Okay.
It comes down, it chamfers down, and then the window is set back in.
So it's set back like the way the original was.
Yes, our intention, and we were actually just on the phone probably 2 hours ago, working out that installation detail with the historical consultant, the window manufacturer, one of the installers, based on the field conditions, trying to get that the best we can. But yes, absolutely. The intent is to pull that window all the way back, keep it set back as far as we can. It will certainly be recessed. It's just we're working on the exact exact installation method based on the original frame, because we have to take the double hung out, but we still have the original frame in there, and we're working that exact detail out right now for those.
Do you know what the original, the the original measurement was, and do you know how close you can come to it?
Yeah, we're within half inch or so. We're very close to back and forth. It's just how we're going to deal with the cavity, if you will, the gap between the masonry and the window. And there's a little bit of a challenge also because the masonry was replaced in those 80s too, so it's not quite original at today. It's almost impossible to get back to original, but it will be significantly recessed.
And in the building on 44th Street, was that the case as well? Because you don't, I don't know, you can't tell. I can't tell from the photo.
Let me see, on 44th, they had a different installation method from what I could see. I didn't have access to all the details, and they also don't have that heavy concrete slab that's protruding in our building. That makes it such a prominent, I'll go to the photo, that makes it such a prominent feature today. So if you see here today, right, these slab edges, you can even see with the double hung, it's even set back fairly deep. It's about 3 inches back.
Okay.
At least we'll be able to maintain about 3 inches back.
Was it not possible to get steel windows? Did they not make, is it cost or is it efficiency or what?
I think it's quite honestly both. And I know steel windows are extremely expensive. Obviously, steel windows aren't going to be the same thermal resistance. I'm not certain if they make a steel thermally broken replacement window, but I do know the other building on 44th Street was also an aluminum replica, and there's a number of companies that are now aluminum material but steel replica windows.
Right, and that Landmarks is approved.
Yes.
Another project. Okay, those were that was my question.
Thank you.
Do other board members?
Yes.
Yes, I have my hand up. I just have a quick question regarding child safety. How safe is this? I guess they swing out, and how far do they swing out? And just compatibility with child safety guards.
So, yep. So 4-inch limit stops are required in New York City, New York City Building Code. So these windows will absolutely have those installed before they're in the apartments with any occupants. So just as if it was new construction, that would be a requirement. Same idea. 4-inch limit stop.
So can you say to 4-inch? What is the rule? I'm not. I don't know.
Sorry, the device is actually, and there's a section in the code called a 4-inch limit stop.
Limit stop. Okay.
Yes. Basically, you can't have a 4-inch sphere is not allowed to pass through the window when it's opened.
Okay.
It limits the swing of the window.
Yeah, Brian, if nobody else has something to say, I'd love to make a couple of few comments. Yeah, definitely, I personally feel a little bit, when we speak about steel window and preservation, and now we have opportunity to have steel window, of which many are definitely they meet LEED standard. They also are thermal breaks window, so there is an opportunity to get back to that kind of slender, more SI structure that only steel certainly can give us. Definitely overall, this is going to give back to the building that general appearance, which was definitely something that the building needed since a long time. I don't know, I know you spoke about double hung window, but the moment we go back to a building that has been definitely nominated as a landmark building in 2003, and the double hung were from 1980s, definitely we will have to go back to whatever original window they were. Normally with wood, what landmark LPC will really care about is the brick mold, and window are probably one of the most important elements, is the one that really define the image as much, a change in window can completely revolution the image of a building. So the corner is something very important, and something I noticed looking at your your proposal is that definitely is not your fault, but aluminum itself as a material doesn't allow us to get the thickness of the steel. We get at the corner kind of 4 and 7, almost 5 inch each side. It means that the corner, we're going to get an overall 10 inch in terms of reading. And I don't think that is the kind of thickness that we had at the corner originally.
Well, I'd like to clarify. This is still conceptual as far as final dimensions, and we are still working on this actual corner window with the manufacturer to get it as tight as possible. We know, as you just mentioned, that original steel corner was very, very thin and delicate and beautiful. Obviously, that's why we paid attention to try to get the glass, head to sill, slide the sleeve over. But additionally, this, as I mentioned before, because you'll notice I didn't show that detail on the detail sheet in here because we don't have it worked out yet. We're still trying to get it as tight as possible in there. As you can see, this was some of the original extrusions here, 7/8 on the steel window, and we got to the 7/8 on the mutton. So we do understand, and I agree with your concern about that right there is sort of the key element, and we are still working on that.
I'm reading the elevation. Of course, there was not a 3D rendering there, but I'm able to read the drawing. So reading your elevation, I read that there is a 4 and 7/8 inch. And so I'm assuming it's not a customized corner, but you're going to join the two windows together, and the result of the joining, because that's what you are proposing us today. I read there 4 and 7/8, 4 and 7/8. So I'm assuming that the corner will become 10 as a total measurement of the corner. But you say they may change, but definitely I know for sure that with aluminum, it's not going to, maybe it will change 1 inch, but it's not going to change to bring us back to the acyl structure of the steel. And my question is, we do have company like Optimum Window, Hops Window. There is actually several New York company that existed for a long time. It would be great if we would have the collaboration and give work to our local New York State manufacturing that they produce steel window, and they produce window that definitely can make aesthetically the requirement of this important landmark project requires, and also all the energy efficiency standard and durability, because something else very important, the durability of steel is also incomparable in comparison to aluminum. And now we have so many treatment that they didn't have back in 1936 and different type of coating that have increased tremendously durability. We see steel window used in many very high-end building. I understand it is a public housing, and maybe they don't deserve that, but I believe it's a national historic landmark. It's been glorified sufficiently, and the corner is so important, and I believe the window are key, and the corner especially, it's a symbol of modernism, and that opening is a symbol of modernism. It was with Bauhaus first in Europe,
Yep.
but that's probably has been the inspiration for the architect at that time. And I know you know that, but I'm trying to understand if we can explore more the steel window as a possibility. Also looking at the scale, maybe it's not that unaffordable, and looking at the durability of the steel itself, maybe it's a
So I completely understand the importance and the passion for that corner, and we will certainly reach out to a few of these steel manufacturers and get some pricing and see if we can work within the budget. I will tell you though, I do know, just to manage expectations, that this current design, even with the aluminum, was a significant hit, I'll just say, on the budget. We feel it's important. Quite honestly, when we were looking at this, one agency said maybe you could just do it on the street side, because they understood the cost implications of what we're going through, trying to make this correct or the best we could, sort of marry both worlds. And we, as a team, ownership, architect, just didn't feel that would sit right with ourselves and the resident, sort of just doing the front facade, if you will. So, this treatment was throughout all windows, courtyards. So obviously it has a significant financial impact on the project, but we'll certainly, reach out to these steel manufacturers, get some pricing, and see if it's, something that can be worked into the project.
Yeah, and one thing just to add in, we don't look at it so much as, what's deserved with it being public housing and stuff like that. But
So,
there's
thank
only
you for
so
mentioning
many.
that. I really thought I would have to follow up on that, but thank you.
But there
Can I,
are a lot
hi,
of
it's Marie. Can
resources.
I add a couple of comments?
Sure.
Okay, I remember when we did the renovations of the buildings because they were in such poor shape. Tenants had to be relocated because the roofs were leaking. The buildings were filled with mold. So, I mean, there was a lot of problems and trying to keep the historic character and do the necessary renovations for the tenants' safety. Now, my concern is you show some of the apartments, but you're not showing the features of the storefronts, and that would be replacement. And the key blue panels that line the entranceway and on the perimeter of the building. So, do you have any plans for that, or is that too premature?
I'll just touch on that. So today, landmarks, LPC specifically asked us to limit it to just window replacement, but your concerns are correct, and that is absolutely part of our larger package that addresses building entrance doors, the commercial storefronts, the blue panels above the commercial storefronts, the site itself as far as landscaping and additional amenities for the tenants. There's a new roofs, tree pruning, security, site lighting, stair rails inside the buildings. So it's quite a comprehensive package for this project. But as I just mentioned, LPC, Landmark Preservation Committee, asked us to specifically, basically, they were happy with this section of the presentation, so they asked us to pull it out, create a presentation specifically on windows, so we could talk in detail about the windows, present that, and then we'll be coming back and presenting the balance of the scope of the project as well.
And who is the client that you are working for? Is it Nature?
So it is RDC Development in partnership with NYCHA. We are forming a joint venture entity. So NYCHA will be leasing the buildings and the land to a joint venture partnership between RDC Development and an entity owned by NYCHA.
That was something very new to us and very new, I guess, to the tenants who live there. So, could you, provide more information on that to the committee in writing?
Yes, definitely. We can certainly submit more details on the ownership structure. I know it's a hot topic and something we like to have a lot of information on, especially for the residents.
Because the structure of management for the buildings and how they were going to be handled in all the public housing has been of interest. And we're concerned about that, especially this is a unique building that that is within our community. So I never heard that they were going to be doing that type of partnership with this development. So
Yeah,
it'd be-
definitely. We can provide more information, and you'd also be welcome to join. We're hosting monthly resident meetings. We just started last month, so there will be a lot of information that we'll be providing to the residents over the next couple of months, information packets, things like that. If you want to shoot me your email, I can certainly get you over whatever you need.
Okay, will do.
I love to clarify something. When I said this is a public housing, I said because I know that the housing authority definitely has some very strict budget that the private sector don't have it, you know. And so really, what I really was encouraging is really to give also, despite the fact that it belongs to housing authority, that they are very important building and that they serve that type of conservation that the other maybe building in the private sector deserve. So I want to clarify that it wasn't denigratory about being the public house. I actually want to be an encouragement in, and as I was promoting Still Window for this project, and probably maybe something maybe not affordable for housing authority to do, but as it is a landmark, I believe is an important feature. I have other comment because I went through the project and somehow it's a larger project and it is about the window, as you said today. And so some other board member made a comment about opening. I believe opening are very important. Many of these original Still Window, they have one important feature. They open at 90 degrees. And I know safety for children is important, but we could achieve the safety to other things. But the opening of this operable window to a 90 degree allowed you, and this has something to do also with energy efficiency, to open the window. Other question is, are those windows screened? Do we have window screen? Because there are mosquitoes, especially on lower level. And when you can open window entirely on a 90-degree angle, you may actually not need to use air condition. So many times, this type of building are forced to use air condition, even when there is no need to use air condition, which you know, it's an energy issue. So this is another invitation to explore and not forget about that we have an operable mechanism that allowed us to, it's something I look immediately and I couldn't read there how much we were able to open the window. Personally, as a designer, I will look into that. One of my clients will want to look into that as a very important feature, you know. By opening, I don't know how many degrees you said, 15 degrees, it's really a small little corner. I mean, maybe we'll,
So Sante, please, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think you've made your point very clear. So what is your response to that?
I was just going to say that the windows will be manufactured to open 90 degrees, but New York City Building Code requires us to put that 4-inch limit stop on there. And regarding the screens, we haven't gotten to the detail of installation of a screen. Obviously, it would be from the inside if we do it. I know in the past that has become a maintenance problem, and sometimes they're moved around, if you will, and damaged, and the overall appearance of the building over time gets degraded from that. But again, we have not even had that conversation about the screen. We've been really trying to solve some of the other issues, but we can certainly get back to you on that.
Yeah, it sounds like you're close with a lot of things, but that what you're presenting to us is not totally complete. Do you think you can come back to us once you've worked out just the corner and looked into the steel and looked into the screen and just that way we know exactly what we're approving? I think to approve it right now would be premature for.
Yeah, I agree. Is there some time limit on this?
We do want to be able to close in June. There are a lot of hoops that we have to jump through in terms of finalizing scope. We have to present this to HUD, Housing Urban Development, from a federal standpoint, and submit multiple applications in order to get this process through. We do want to keep this process moving quickly. And so whatever we can do, I don't know what the timing would be for the next opportunity we would have to
our next land use meeting, where it would be great if you could come back with the final design, would be the first week in February, first Monday in February, and then the second Tuesday is when we hold our board meeting and when it could be voted on. So by mid-February we could have a solid answer for you. And if there's anything else you want to chip away at, if you come back to our meeting next in the committee meeting in February with something preliminary, so we could take a look at it, and then that might help with when you have to bring the next set of things back to it.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to also just temper expectations a little bit. When it comes to things like using steel for the windows, getting rid of ACs and things like that. When it comes to steel, we do have a lot of budget constraints. I know there's a whole nother piece of the project that we're not talking about today, but I don't think it's a secret that Williamsburg Houses has extensive environmental, specifically lead problems that need to be addressed. We're trying to focus on life safety first, just general betterment of life for the residents as well, and really transforming the housing from somewhere that has a rougher reputation when it comes to lead, environmental hazards, all those things, and really turn it into a place that residents really can go home to and be happy with. I know I've heard a lot about security concerns, items like that. And then when it comes to the AC units, we've dealt with this in other public housing where we have put in casement windows. We've actually had to do full adjustments after finishing non-historic projects, but full adjustments afterwards because residents look at air conditioning, I mean, just like many of us would, as an amenity, and opening the window really isn't an option for the residents that is equal to them. And so we want to make sure we're not reducing anything from the residents. We want to keep the services that they have and strictly make the site better.
And you're probably working too with landmarks on all that. I mean, there's a give and take.
Yes,
It came
exactly.
to us as a landmark issue, and that's how we're viewing what you brought to us. And so if we need to widen the scope of how we're looking at it, that's understood. And maybe when you come back, we can work, that can be part of the expectation.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a couple of questions.
So did I after Dell. So
Okay, great. Have you discussed with, well, first of all, the air conditioners, are the residents going to have to buy new air conditioners? Are they going to be able to use the ones they have, or are you going to supply air conditioners to make it more uniform?
So the residents are going to be able to utilize their current air conditioning units. So we've picked and we've gone through and sized a universal sleeve, if you will, that's large enough to receive 90%, 95% of your the standard ACs that are manufactured today.
Okay.
So tenants would not have to go out and buy new AC units.
Okay, and with screens, I would agree that the option to have screens, I would think, would be important. Have you discussed this with the residents at the meetings that you've had with them?
No, quite honestly, we haven't discussed screens at all ever with anyone. I'm not saying we're not doing it. It's just we haven't discussed the screen aspect of the window. We've been focusing on, the aesthetics, the functionality, the code issues, the ACs, the landmark appearance. We just haven't gotten into the screen, but we will certainly have that addressed by next time that we come back.
And do the residents have screens now?
I don't recall. I'd have to double check my records. Someone's saying no.
Okay.
yeah, I just had a question. You mentioned thermal resistance. Will these new proposed windows take the building further in terms of energy efficiency, carbon footprint, Climate Mobilization Act?
Yes, the windows themselves will meet the 2020 New York City Energy Conservation Construction Code. So the current code, as if it was a brand new building, the windows will meet that energy efficiency rating. And just off topic slightly, but related to that, new roof insulation will meet the current energy criteria as well. So while we're not fully bringing the envelope up, anything we're touching is certainly being brought up to today's standards.
Also, Brian, in regard to air conditioning, because, definitely in historic building, I live in Greenpoint. In our building, for example, the front of the building, you cannot use window air conditioned because they're not appropriate. Some buildings do, not in our building. You can use portable air conditioning. I understand the issue that it can occupy for floor space, but sometimes if it's a landmark building, that comes to a certain compromise. But what about exploring the possibility, as they are not very tall building, they're only 4-story building, we have roof all around. What about providing this tenant with some split system, which will be quite easy to do? It's not very complex. It will resolve the issue of the window. Will resolve simultaneously the issue occupying floor space, as that is a very even more energy efficient of this 1970s system that we still use in the United States. No other country use anymore air window system. So I was wondering, did we explore split system?
Yes, we have. The issues, there are a pretty long list of issues that we discovered, ranging from the layout of the buildings, the electric service in the buildings, and just the functionality of how to actually install it, given the buildings are kind of chopped up. I don't think we need to go through all of it right now, but it is something we have explored because it was something that was on our wish list, so to speak. Unfortunately, we cannot find an economical way to do it that wouldn't completely blow up the budget.
There's a,
Can I just, Steve, just with respect to this, there's a comment on the chat.
that's what I was going to.
Oh, okay, go ahead then, as long as just so somebody sees it.
Yeah. It's from Katie Naplatarski. I agree that everything should be done to enable residents to open windows, including screens. People should have the open to have fresh air for comfort, health, and efficiency costs.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Noted, thank you.
And final comment, something technical. I know they ask you to come back again, but probably it's good if I make this comment now. Well, you may come back with a still window, but is a problem what I see or configuration of the window. I'm making an example, for example, Windows Type B, and the original window we had it was actually a window composed of 5 units. And the moment you accommodate and you resize is we actually redivide the window unit in 6 type of partition, but we change substantially the dimension of the lights, of the glass lights, which to me aesthetically, I don't know, it feels there is something that I don't see very harmonious happening there. If we look again at Windows Type B.
So you're absolutely, Sante, you're absolutely correct. And that's something we spoke about an hour ago, literally with the installer and the manufacturer. And as we were going through it, we picked that up and we said, you know what, there's too many lights in this. We've lost sight and we've lost some of that originality. So that's going to have 5 as opposed to 6. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, and I see something similar happening again somewhere else. And so I don't want to go back there to other type B, Type C, and so on, but Type A. But definitely this is just to give you some extra input. It would be nice to see re-harmonizing back to the original.
Yep.
Thank you.
I agree.
That's great. So I guess we will not vote. We'll wait for you guys to come back to our next meeting. And we'll report to the board that you did come and give them sort of a synopsis of where we've left things. And we look forward to having you come back in February to talk windows and talk more if there's more to talk about.
Let me just ask, is there anyone on the committee who would object to putting off a vote on this tonight? All right, I'm not gonna take a roll call on that. Just if you have an objection and you feel that we must vote tonight, just speak up or wait till next month.
Kenny, are there any timeline concerns if we don't have a vote tonight?
I don't believe so, but I will get back to Marie as soon as I find out. I'll look into it tonight and tomorrow.
Well, either way, we'll be next month then.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very
everyone.
much. Thank you.
Okay, so moving right along here, we are going to resume our discussions with city planning with respect to possibly getting more flexibility in our zoning tools, especially in our either mixed use or manufacturing areas. And we did ask that we could discuss what's going on with the Gowanus area, because we were informed that there may be some more flexibility in the tools available to the Gowanus area, and then we wanted to see if we could benefit from that. And also, just to let you all know that there is a proposed new zoning for hotels. There's going to be a scoping meeting, as I understand it, and Alex and you and your people can clarify that if necessary. But I think the scoping meeting is on January 22nd. So I think it would be really great to discuss that. It looks to me like there's going to be a requirement that hotels, the new applications will have to get a special permit, but I don't know, if that's across the board. And Alex, you all can let us know about that. I will mention that our board has been requesting the requirement of a special permit for hotels for some time now. And of course, then I would ask, will the community board, will they come before the community board the way applicants who need a special permit normally do? And so maybe we can touch on that tonight. So I don't know, Alex, I don't know if you're going to give us the slideshow, or, and who is here with you tonight, if you can just let us know that.
Sure. Can you all see my screen?
I think so. It says commercial and industrial zoning.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So happy New Year, everybody. My name is Alex Summer. I'm with the Department of City Planning. I'm the Deputy Director of the Brooklyn office. I'm joined by two other planners from our office, Karenza Wood, who I'm sure you all know,
Yes.
as well as Alexandra Patty Diaz, who is taking over the liaison role for Community Board 1 in our office. And if Alexandra could take 2 seconds to introduce herself just to everybody, that would be great.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alexandra Patty Diaz. I'm an urban designer and city planner. Been working in the department for almost 5 years. And previously, I've been covering the area of East New York. And now I'm doing East New York Bushwick, but it focuses on the community district. I'm very excited to connect with you with all the projects that we have in the pipeline, but also in this planning discussions about the future of your district.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. There's a PDF presentation included in the WebEx introduction. It's actually kind of text heavy, and there's a lot of information in it. I'm not going to spend all night going through each slide. You should think of the document as kind of a reference to point to. I'll point out really important things that I hope you can take a look at, because I know there's a lot of questions about Gowanus and hotels. I want to spend more time with everyone on the questions. So I'll just quickly go through some of these slides here if I can. There we go. Okay, so just at a high level, recapping where you can find out more information for those of you who are interested. You can go to our website, nyc.gov/planning. We have information about all of the zoning districts here. Here's just a quick screenshot. You can click on zoning, click on districts and tools, click on manufacturing districts, and then you can go through M1, M2, M3, and it'll provide you with a really high quality, easy snapshot about what those districts do. I also want to encourage you, if you haven't already, to go to our web mapping tool. It's called Zola. The website link is there on the top left. This is what it looks like for Community Board 1, Community District 1. Just at a high level, yellow is residential, red is commercial, and purple is industrial. This is, I should clarify, this is the zoning. This is what's allowed to be developed. This is not necessarily showing what is in existence currently on the ground. That's considered land use. Something else which you can also see, that's the bottom left of the screen, are industrial business zones, IBZs. A little confusing. It does have the term zone in it, but it's about a geography. It's not the same thing as zoning districts. IBZs are really about service provision, tax incentives, and other policies that are implemented, but it's not necessarily zoning, which is there too. So I wanted to clarify those a couple of things. And then this is the last high level slide, just so that we're all on the same page. On the left are some of the zoning districts that are mapped within Community District 1. They're M1s, M3s, C8s, and then the two kind of major, there are some other MX districts, but M12R6A and M12R6B. These are where they allow both commercial, industrial, as well as residential on the same site or within the same building. And just so you're aware, so there's a meaning to all of these letters and numbers. This is an example, M12, M1-2. The first letter identifies the type of uses that are allowed. The second letter identifies how intense those uses can be. So 1 is the light industrial, 3 would be heavy industrial, and then the -2 or -1 or -3 or whatever, that's the density. That's how big a building can be, as well as a nomenclature for the parking and loading requirements. So that's kind of the synopsis. Again, this is all included earlier in the presentation so that you can refer to it later. Okay. So this is a really complex slide. Again, this is for reference, but what I want to show here are the way to think about zoning. It's how different uses are allowed across different zoning districts. That's the different colors you see up there, the yellows, the blues, the reds, the purples. And then on the top bar are all of the different zoning districts that we currently have. And so you can see, here's a snapshot of all the M1, M2, and M3 districts. You can see the different types of uses that would be allowed across the board in each of those. Residential is not allowed in any of them. And then only the most intense uses, use group 18, are allowed in the M3 districts. That's things that are like really nasty, kind of polluting. You don't want near residential. The second column or the second row are bulk. That's the density. That's how big a building can be. We use a measurement called FAR, that's floor area ratio. That's just a number that's made up that tells you how many square foot you can build within a lot. So 1 FAR, 1 floor area ratio, is you're allowed to build 1 times whatever the lot area is. If your lot is 10,000 square feet, you can build a 10,000 square foot building. That's kind of the shorthand. So for manufacturing and industrial uses, those are the allowable FARs, the floor area ratios. And if you notice in the M1s, there's also community facility uses. That's the next row. And you'll see that some of them are significantly higher. There's a lot more community facility uses allowed in a lot of the M1 districts than for industrial, commercial, or manufacturing uses. And I'll talk a little bit about that, what that means later on. Third, as I mentioned before, is parking and loading. And these are some of the parking requirements for new construction. And you can see actually that some districts like M14, M15, M16 have no parking requirements, whereas the M1s for M11, M12, M13 is actually, for example, one parking space for every 300 square feet. And I'll explain what that means in a little bit. But down at the bottom, again, it's a lot of text, but it's all of the different types of use groups that are allowed at a high level. And you should feel free to use this as a cheat sheet when you have to look at projects coming through, or if you have suggestions about how to change zoning, or you have ideas on that. Okay, again, a lot of text, but the key takeaways on permitted uses. They're really complex. They have mostly remained in M districts unchanged since they were mapped in 1961. So they have a lot of weird uses in there that we don't currently have in the city, and they don't include a lot of uses that we do currently have in the city. The intent of the use groups, this was all invented in the 1950s, was intended to separate out polluting uses, things that provide nuisances from residential. That was the whole concept back then. You'll often hear a lot about things called performance standards. These were invented as part of this to say that you're allowed to make so much noise. And once you go above all that noise, you're actually not allowed. You get either punished, you get sued, you can get fined. Again, that was instituted in the invented in the
Hey, sweetie.
in 1961. But what I want to call out is that most of the performance standards that you see in the zoning today are completely outdated. They are mostly regulated by other city, state, and federal agencies. And so we found that most of that is outsourced to different entities and not really within the zoning. It doesn't really enforce much anymore. Also want to point out that a lot of retail is limited to less than 10,000 square feet in all M districts. This is, you'll often see, it's called big box limitations, things like supermarkets, department stores. There are some exceptions, which we can get into. And then, of course, community facilities, which I talked about earlier. There's a wide variety of community facilities, but what's really mostly allowed in M districts are things like houses of worship, churches, synagogues, or medical offices. So things like hospitals or doctor's offices. Schools are allowed, but there's again a BSA special permit for that. And I just want to go to the next slide here. I don't want to take up too much more time. And then again, how big a building can be built. Again, focusing on the bottom right here, we really only have a few density regulations associated with M districts. They're not very complex. It's 1, 2, 5, or 10. That's 1 FAR, 2 FAR, 5 FAR, or 10 FAR. If you want to build a 4 FAR building, there isn't kind of a middle ground there. If you want to build an 8 FAR building, there really isn't a middle ground. These are all the variations that we have. In MX districts specifically, that's where you're allowed to mix residential with commercial, industrial, and manufacturing. The residential building envelope really guides the development, which actually makes it a little bit more difficult than originally intended to actually mix industrial and commercial uses with residential. And then finally, the parking, as I mentioned before, is extremely high. It was predicated on the idea in the 1950s that everything was suburbanizing, and M districts really needed to compete with Long Island and New Jersey, and everybody was driving to industrial parks. And so they thought if they could make big parking lots, then more people would want to have their jobs here in the city. What we found though is that the parking requirements are now are so high that they actually mostly take up most of the ground floor if you want to build a new industrial, commercial, or manufacturing building. And so that also limits new construction of those uses. And we found that it's actually one of the biggest hurdles to building new job spaces in these areas. So here's the quick cheat sheet of all of that. If you want to know about what's in M1, you just look up and down the row. These are the uses, the FARs, and the parking. Again, I hope this is going to be a little bit useful as you review projects or look at zoning in the future. Okay, so we've also recently looked since about 2016, 2014 at a number of different conditions. We've created what you are probably familiar with, the Industrial Business Incentive Area, the IBIA. That was in 2016 with the 19-25 Kent Avenue project. We've instituted a self-storage text amendment, which is citywide special permit for self-storage within industrial business areas, industrial business zones, excuse me. That was in 2017. Hotel text amendment, which was applied to M1 geographies in 2018. That's the hotel special permit for M1 districts. We undertook a physical building analysis, like an architectural analysis of mixed use typologies across the city. We released that in 2018 and encourage you to take a look at that. I'll have some snapshots of that later. And then you're probably aware of what we did in 2018 and 2019, which was look at the North Brooklyn IBZ area and think about how we could update the zoning in that geography, the area along Newtown Creek, to accommodate different types of uses, some more flexibility, and so on. But aside from just the physical aspects and the zoning, we also looked at all of the economic development, employment, geography, workforce analysis, and studies. These are some examples. Side. Again, all this is on our website, and I find this stuff really, really fascinating. One of them, which was really incredible, our snapshot in 2019 about workers without college degrees. So these are what kind of jobs and salaries are available to people without college education. And this applies to some of the work that and the way we think about how spaces should be used across the city. So really interesting stuff. Feel free to nerd out on this stuff and reach out to us if you have more questions. Finally, not just zoning. We talk a lot about zoning at city planning, but there's a lot of other factors that go into why a business would want to locate in Brooklyn or in New York City, or not locate, or what are the considerations, the incentives, and things that we have to do to think about why a business would locate in New York City. Obviously, movement of goods and people. So how do trucks move around the city? When we think something getting delivered to the port in New Jersey, how does it get to us in Brooklyn? Or if a ship was to come to Brooklyn, how would it get distributed across Brooklyn and the rest of the city? Thinking about how businesses actually operate within a space. So if they have clients that want to come do a site visit, or they need to get out and go to a workshop in Manhattan, how do they move around back and forth? And that includes everything from, again, driving, but also the transit access for their employees and workforce and visitors to the area. Of course, development costs, we all know, we're all familiar with how expensive it is to live and work in New York City. That's no different from development. And so that plays an important role about how a business would locate and where. And then things that we sometimes don't think about, which is the cost of electricity, or the cost of garbage disposal, or water and sewer, and the cost of operating a business in Brooklyn or New York City as compared with other places. And so I just want to, as we talk about zoning, don't want to forget about all the other factors that go into business growth and business change in New York City. And so just some examples of what we've seen get built under the existing zoning. Not to comment on the architecture of these, but on the left is M12. So this is kind of, it has a low base height with a taller building pushed into the middle. These are these old 1960s sky exposure plane envelopes. C82s, which are auto kind of oriented. This is a bunch of medical facility uses in here, and triggers a lot of parking, which is not seen directly here. And we're actually seeing in MX districts, especially towards in the western portion of Community Board 1, the value of retail has been so high that people are allowed to build residential, and they're instead building out, maximizing the non-residential portion of the building. And you can see this here. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic about how zoning changes what can be allowed and built in conjunction with all the other business factors that I outlined earlier. This was the business study that I talked about earlier. So this is the type of things that we think about when we try and change the zoning or think about changes to the zoning. We think about how the ground floor will be, where the parking and loading will be located, how the core, the elevator and the stairwells work in mixed use buildings, and including everything from like HVAC systems. So that's ventilation, how you get, the smell of chemicals up and above residential or above. I just want to highlight some of the things that we think about.
Alex, can I just stop you there for a minute?
Sure.
When you were talking about in the mixed use districts and the ratio between the commercial usage and the residential, are you seeing a change in that? Are you seeing that there's more or less use of commercial space versus residential?
I would say pre-COVID, in western portions, transit accessible portions of Community Board 1, we've been seeing some in really high value areas. So like Bedford Avenue and those kind of locations, we've actually seen people foregoing the residential portions and building out only the non-residential space, which is kind of different than we've seen historically. We've always seen that residential has been the highest value. and people, some developers are taking advantage of the higher commercial rents and building only that. Again, because it's harder to mix the uses in under current zoning. And so, yeah, we've seen that. There's not hundreds of examples of this, but it is a trend that we've picked up on.
Yeah, I was noticing that, so I didn't know if I was, seeing something real or imaginary.
Yeah, and we'll get to this, but we're trying to consider that as part of the changes in Gowanus as well, and I can point to that.
Okay, thanks.
So I know you had some questions about Gowanus. Do you want me to talk about what's being proposed currently, or do you want to just jump into questions now?
Well, maybe we can see if anyone has any questions now.
Sure.
And then we can go on to Gowanus. Steve, do you have your hand up, or is that from earlier?
That was from earlier, sorry.
Okay, Karen?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Just, I guess the main question that I have is, how does the Gowanus proposal compare to the North Brooklyn Innovation Study?
Sure.
So that kind of brings us into Gowanus. And maybe, unless someone has a pressing question before we get to Gowanus, then Alex, you can just, I guess, go on to the Gowanus and then respond to Karen here.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I apologize.
No, that may make more sense, actually.
Okay. Do you want me to?
Yeah, let's go into the Gowanus.
Okay, sure. So, great question. Thank you for the segue. So yeah, that's an important point that Gowanus. So the goals of North Brooklyn, the study, and the proposed land use framework there are different in a little bit, in many ways, and I'll explain them here in a little bit. But at a high level, residential is being proposed for the Gowanus neighborhood. And so there are new tools for residential only districts. There are new tools for MX districts, the mixed use residential and industrial. And then there's new tools for the M only areas where we're not rezoning for residential in Gowanus. And so I would say the residential component is probably the largest overall difference. It's allowing residential in that area. And that would be the biggest difference. I would say there are also, obviously it's a different neighborhood, transit access, and the surrounding neighborhoods are different. And so the commercial markets are slightly different as well. And I can go into that a little bit more, but that's the big difference.
So what additional zoning tools will Gowanus have that would go beyond what we have now?
So on this, yeah, that's on this page, this is where we've identified new M-only districts. These are not residential. These allow for commercial, industrial, manufacturing uses. As I mentioned before, there's not a lot of variation under existing M districts today. So we've identified new medium density or low and medium density M districts. That's 2 FAR, 3 FAR, and 4 FAR. Excuse me. What we've seen is that there's a lot of great industrial loft buildings around the city, but they couldn't be built legally today. They have nice floor to ceiling heights. They allow a variety of uses, and they seem to hover, at least in Brooklyn, in kind of the 3 to 6 FAR range, 3 to 5 FAR range. And so, and they basically have, 15 to 20 foot floor to ceiling heights, and they allow for a variety of uses. So what we've crafted here, and what we're proposing, is to create new loft-like industrial envelopes. And when I say loft, it's not the residential loft that you may be familiar with that terminology. It's industrial, commercial, and manufacturing loft buildings. And so these are the examples here. They allow for slightly bigger envelopes. The dotted line is how big a building could be built, which allows for more flexibility with floor to ceiling heights, dormers, and so on. And it allows for slightly more FAR. And that's basically what it's looking at. I should note in these districts, other uses are limited. So it preferences commercial and industrial uses. It still allows retail, community facility, and entertainment uses, but it's at a lower FAR than the total. So for example, if you have a 4 FAR district here on the right, you'd still be allowed 2 FAR of retail and entertainment uses or medical facilities. But if you wanted to max out the full 4 FAR, you would have to build commercial, industrial, and manufacturing uses. And so that is also a slight difference as well. The other big thing is that these districts would not require parking. Again, we found that as to be a big hindrance to new job creation. It really doesn't help with the ground floor condition. And so we basically wanted to get the parking out of the way. There are some loading changes as well, but we can talk about that at a different time or later on. The MX districts, these are some examples of the new MX districts. As we mentioned before, we know that they're not working wonderfully. People tend to build either just commercial or industrial uses or just residential. And it's very difficult to mix the two. So we're tweaking some of the ratios here, bumping up the non-residential floor area to really make it more competitive. And to be quite frank, remember we institute mandatory inclusionary housing, MIH. So MIH would be on top of this. So MIH on the residential, actually, it kind of even weights the non-residential even more by mixing these in the lower density districts. Again, parking for the non-residential would be not required. That's different than what's in Greenpoint and Williamsburg today. And the parking, obviously, for the residential is also waived or reduced for the affordable housing. But I want to highlight that these districts, again, would not be required for the non-residential portion. Finally, on these, I also want to highlight that, as I mentioned before, the building envelopes are bigger. It means you can build a bigger building so that you are not penalized for including the different types of uses here. So you're allowed to build bigger ground floors. For non-residential spaces, you're actually allowed to build, your 15-foot floor to ceiling heights to actually accommodate those uses. And you don't get penalized in the envelope so that it shrinks both the residential and the commercial floor plates down. So I wanted to highlight that. In areas, there are some ground floor requirements in residential districts. So the other districts, the MX, the mixed residential and commercial industrial, they're not required to mix. Here, in the higher density MX districts, there would be a requirement for some non-residential space. So there would be a combo. It's a carrot and a stick. There's a requirement, that's the sticks, for certain ground floor non-residential uses in certain locations. And then there's a carrot, there's an incentive. There's free floor area if you include non-residential. And that's to try and get above the ground floor for non-residential uses. And so for example here, it's R7X. Let me pull up this here. So basically in R7X districts, and there's another one later on.
I'm just seeing a gray screen. I don't know what other people are seeing.
Seeing the same.
Oh, okay.
Okay, not one away. There's still small.
Is it better?
There's a small gray rectangle to the right upper
I wonder if I can.
corner.
Did it just disappear again?
It disappeared. Oh, nope. Now it's back. Okay.
We're good?
Yeah, there's still a
It's ghosting some of your prior windows somehow.
yeah.
I don't know what's going on. Well, anyway, you guys have the PDF. I'm sorry you can't see the whole thing. What I'll explain on this slide is that there's a total max FAR, as an example in this district, of 6.0 FAR across the board. The residential that's allowed is 5.6. Okay, so there's a difference between the residential, which is 5.6, and the total, which is 6.0. So there's 0.4 FAR available of non-residential space above and beyond the ground floor requirement. So what this means is that if you want to utilize all of your floor, you're a developer, I'm assuming you would want to max out all of your floor area. In order to be able to do that, you would need to provide non-residential space of 0.4 FAR. And let me see if it, can you see this one? Is this one blocked out too? Is this okay? So this is another example along the waterfront of another mix. It's a slightly different ratio here. It's 0.6 incentive for this area. Something I want to point out, and what we're proposing in Gowanus, is of that 0.6 or of that 0.4, half of that, so 0.2 or 0.3, would actually have a smaller set of non-residential uses that would be allowed. In Gowanus, this is a mix of uses that already exists in the neighborhood. So it's industrial, it's manufacturing, it's also arts related. It's basically to ensure that as the neighborhood changes, as the neighborhood adds residential, that ground floors and sometimes upper second floors, there's still that Gowanus mix, that neighborhood character of art spaces, offices, small scale manufacturers. We're trying to evolve and change. We know that that things will not necessarily be the same, but we want to ensure that what makes Gowanus unique is carried on through in the new developments, and that's basically what's being proposed for the mixed use there. And I can stop here and take questions on Gowanus, and then we can talk about the hotel stuff if you'd like.
Yeah, I had a question. One about, are there any height limits on any of the zoning designations, either just the straight M1s or the MX? And Katie Napatarsky in the comment is asking, whose proposal is the Gowanus proposal and who created it?
Okay, so I'll do the height limits first. So for the M districts, if you can see the screen, these actually create, if you're familiar with the residential districts we have in Greenpoint Williamsburg, we have like R6B, R6A, R7A. The letters designate that there's a, quote, contextual zoning district. It's an envelope that is no longer guided by that sky exposure plane that allows for buildings to go tall if they're in the middle of the site. It actually puts a height limit on it. These new M districts would have height limits. They're proposed to do that. They're modified, they're loose and modified to allow for a variety of different non-residential uses, commercial, office, industrial, manufacturing. So they allow for bigger floor to ceiling heights, ultimately a bigger building. But this is much different than what we have today, which says if you have a big lot, you can push your building to the middle of the lot and you can just rise up to a very tall height. These, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. It creates a much more predictable development framework, and it allows for a bigger front facade of a building, which is much more similar to the industrial loft buildings that we see around Brooklyn today. And then on the second question, Gowanus has been in the works for years. This was a proposal that was initiated when the mayor was a council member many years ago. It was started and stopped a couple of different times. We've had lots of outreach and engagement with different stakeholder groups, environmental groups, urban design groups, affordable housing groups, and it has evolved over many years. So it was really a collaboration between the now Councilmember Levin and Councilmember Lander in developing a new framework for this area over years of engagement with different groups. and to a point where we're hoping to actually certify the zoning this month and begin the public review process, ULURP, this month. That's the goal.
Can you give us more specifics about the height limitations?
Sure. So in the 2 FAR, 3 FAR, and 4 FAR new M districts, what's being proposed is a base height that's a street wall. So rising sheer from the sidewalk, you would be allowed to rise 45 feet, 65 feet, and 95 feet. Generally, that's 2 to 3 stories, all the way up to, 9-ish stories, 8 stories. Then you set back anywhere between 10 or 15 feet or so. And then you can rise to the maximum building height of, in this case, 55 feet, 85 feet, and 115 feet. So the buildings would be able to rise between 2 or 3 stories all the way up to 10, maybe even 11 stories, depending on the zoning district. And
Alex, it's Marie. I have a question.
Hi, yes.
I see the designs of the buildings and so forth, but is there an overall map of the area of Gowanus where this would apply to?
That's a great question. I did not include a map in the presentation, but there are a couple of different maps on the Gowanus webpage of Department of City Planning that indicate where all the M districts, MX districts, and residential districts. I'm sorry I didn't do that, but I can send a link after the meeting if you want to share that.
Okay,
That's what I
I think
sent
that's
around.
important so we can compare what this proposal is and look at it in terms of our area, because it may be two different densities.
Yep.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions, Alex. Before you mention, for example, in regard to MR1, in order to, in terms of FAR4, it should be, the development should be a mix of commercial, industrial, manufacturing. Now, what I want to understand, in what proportion manufacturing, industrial, commercial? And and then also you spoke about definitely art related later on. That's very important to maintain that type of character. And this is something definitely could apply to our Williamsburg and Bushwick and Greenpoint. And so you went in detail into art spaces, small scale manufacturing. And now my question is also very simple. We have recently a large development. It was an M31. And then he went for an M15, the Acme development. And in that type of project, we maintain a small existing manufacturing, but definitely from a 1-story building, we went to a 9-story, but 80% of their square footage became commercial. And they were definitely maintained as a flexible space. It means they could potentially rent the entire 100,000 square feet floor. And so none of those things you mentioned, maintaining the art-related character of the neighborhood, the small scale, and the manufacturing actually apply entirely. So could you clarify more in relation also to that? And in what proportion, like for example, this Acme development, in what proportion would have applied to go from a manufacturing to commercial? Also, something important you mentioned, I believe, and is related to potential jobs that the development itself could produce. And something that I personally have mentioned is that people with a high school degree, they have more opportunity. They don't have a BA, they don't have a university degree. They have more opportunity of making more money, far more money in manufacturing jobs, and actually in small scale, in craft jobs, than not by employed in any other commercial type of jobs. Thank you. That's all. If you can do a more comprehensive comment on this.
Sure. No, those are great questions. So I'll start on the ratios here. So if you can see this slide, we have 2, 3, and 4 FAR, commercial and industrial manufacturing districts. It's basically, without getting into too much detail, the existing zoning in a lot of the area is either M1-1 or M1-2. meaning it allows 1 or 2 FAR today. What the intent here is that anywhere that gets additional FAR would basically have, would be granted that, I don't know if I could call it restricted new zoning, but it doesn't limit what you would be allowed to do today. So for example, if you're in an M1-2 zoning district, you're allowed community facility, office, retail, entertainment, industrial manufacturing up to 2 FAR. Community facilities higher, but for those purposes, 2 FAR. If you are now mapped with this new M1-4 FAR district, you would still be allowed 2 FAR of those existing uses, you know, the whole bag, mixed bag of M uses. The additional FAR, that 2 FAR, would be limited to what we identify as job dense uses that are more job dense than community facility or retail or entertainment uses. And that would be for office, industrial, and manufacturing. And so obviously it's a lower FAR district than a 3 FAR or 2 FAR. And so those, the use limits would not apply to the entire building. It would just be for that either 1 or 2 FAR that's existing today. So anywhere you go up 2, 3, 4 FAR, it's that additional bump is what would be, would not have those same use limits to that. For the arts uses, cultural uses and light industrial uses, there's going to be, I can't go into all of what's included because we're actually still working on all of the uses. That's why one of the reasons why we hope to certify this January. So we're still working on compiling all of those more detailed uses. But basically, if you can go to, let's see if I can go to an earlier slide. Stuff on the bottom right, which is probably really hard to see and difficult. But if you read through some of these things, it's really the stuff that would really be focused on art galleries, jewelry makers, some of the more craftsman type uses, and then things that are related to light manufacturing, repair, and so on. What would not be allowed still are some of the more heavily polluting or intensive either truck or air quality issues, the uses that would produce those kinds of things. They're much more difficult to locate, and we found that there's a lot of reasons why they should not be located in a building with residential or directly adjacent to a building with residential uses. And I think there was a third question. I'm sorry. Oh, the job quality. Yes. So we know Brooklyn historically has been a gateway for people that have not had college degrees to work in I would argue highly skilled but high wage but low educational attainment jobs through its history since the 1940s, 1930s, and so on. We have a long history of people walking to work in Brooklyn, particularly in Greenpoint, Williamsburg, and we know how those jobs are really important. The conflict, the difficulty that we have in New York City is how to ensure that populations that either don't speak English at all or not well, people that don't have college degrees can still have opportunities to have a great life in New York City, raise a family, and not be displaced through cost of living. What we've found though is that over time, those good paying industrial and manufacturing jobs, they've bifurcated. The kind of the factory pressing out like lots of products in a manufacturing setting has either gone out of the city down to the southern United States, non-union states, or abroad. The manufacturing in a lot of instances that have been left have been primarily centered on things that are consumed in New York City. So things like food production, niche, small scale production, the film sector, transportation, warehousing, distribution, and kind of like architectural related manufacturing, things like woodworking, glass, glazing, and things like that. We've seen a lot of that transition has become it's extremely skilled, and it is hard to just walk in off of the street and get those jobs. And so I actually hope that everybody can read through some of these employment and economic growth documents online. They show kind of the trend about how geographically these jobs are moving locations across the city, outside of the city. They show the types of jobs that are available and high paying based on educational attainment and sector. And they give a snapshot of the growing sectors that are available to people without college degrees that can make, you know, 40, 50, maybe $60,000 a year and don't require that college education. That all said, it's very difficult to have a good paying job without college nowadays. And so that's just one of those transitions that we're trying to grapple with, both in our educational system in New York City, as well as the types of jobs we incentivize and want to see grow. It's really complex, but I could spend hours talking about this stuff. And so I highly recommend going through some of these documents here. And I'm offering myself to come back out and talk about this in more detail with everyone.
No, Alex, what I was referring in particular, it was about how do you maintain a smaller scale space? Let's say flexible space is the entire floor potentially, but how do you maintain beyond the working? I was thinking more to a reality of our neighborhood. Many people working independently, maybe some with a college degree, but maybe in arts, and they have to become cabinet maker in order to make a living. And maybe it's a small operation, but still create independence, entrepreneurial type of work. And but what you need in order to be able to engage into that, you need smaller scale space, maybe 700 square feet, maybe 1,000 square feet, maybe smaller, maybe double when you have become bigger. And that's not the problem, to get a bigger space that costs more. But this smaller scale, this was the tradition. That's how the large factory, pencil factory in Brooklyn, were chopped down, and still they operate the same way. So as long as they are affordable and they are smaller space, they create a potential to be independent, you know. So we're not talking about, we understand that the factory is gone and the large manufacturing where people is there working like a robot is not here anymore. So we're talking about maybe some of the hipster were artists and they have to make a living by doing something else, and many have become a bigger manufacturer later on, but still some are still a small craftsmen. And I believe, how do we maintain, and I thought that what you mentioned before about our space is small scale was probably meant to maintain their smaller scale. How do we put the developer in a position not to get into large flexible space, but be strictly regulated to having to maintain 1,000 square feet, hundreds of thousands square feet space?
Yeah, I understand. Unfortunately, zoning is a really blunt tool for controlling the inside of buildings, and we don't have a lot of success being really specific or explicit about what can go on inside of a building. We have obviously use restrictions or incentives, which kind of at a high level we can talk about. You're allowed to do jewelry manufacturing, but you're not allowed to do a car sales building. We can do that, but we haven't had great success in regulating like the square footages of individual tenant spaces within a single owned building. And I don't have a great answer for you on how to do that. But it does seem that I want to point out that the nonprofit property owners and for-profit property owners have tended to shift to produce those smaller scale spaces because it looks like that's where the market has been going. And I know that that in a lot of these new developments, they seem to be going to the more small scale spaces on their own. And that seems to be more to what you're referring to, which is kind of where the market is for that. I don't have a great zoning answer for you on that, and we can talk about more what that means. But yeah, we don't really regulate the interior square footage of tenant spaces.
I have a question. Sante, I'm not sure if you're referring only to, the how can we regulate the indoor spaces, or if you're talking about the building, the outside of the building in general, and trying to see how we could look toward smaller buildings, and not have to deal with these tall buildings.
Absolutely, definitely was priority is the smaller building, the smaller scale, which I believe the smaller scale, as you said, automatically will redimension us everything to a more human scale. But the more we go bigger, the more, as we cannot regulate the interior of the space it will create even bigger space. So we can talk about jewelry maker, but who's going to rent 20,000 square feet as a jewelry maker? Nobody, so it's kind of, so yes, I agree with you. It's about everything, but it was also about comment to what he was said about small scale manufacturing our space. This is the word I heard before from Alex when he spoke about maintaining the character. And immediately I talked about the character of our neighborhoods.
So I don't know, Alex, if this is accurate as an observation of the Gowanus plan, but it seems to me that the Gowanus district, the people or the community board in Gowanus has actually accepted the idea that they will have larger buildings, but that there will be more flexibility with respect to the ceiling heights and the way that the users will be able to build within those buildings. But it doesn't look to me like they're really concentrating on trying to limit the height and the size of the buildings so much as get a different, more flexibility with respect to what kinds of maybe making buildings more attractive to encourage businesses and industry to come there.
Yeah, I mean, the new development is going to be significantly bigger than what's there today. And part of that, and this also goes to what we were talking about before, is just lot size in general. Does do some of that. The larger lots in Gowanus are closer towards the waterfront. But as I mentioned before, this is not, the Gowanus plan is not just a plan for only jobs or industrial or manufacturing space. But there's a lot of asks in Gowanus. There's asks for affordable housing, new market rate housing. There's asks for active retail and neighborhood services, new schools. Similar to Greenpoint and Williamsburg, there's a lot of brownfields, a lot of polluted sites. And so there's a lot of cleanup that's going to be needed and asked of private developers to clean up sites. And similar again to Community District 1, there's an entire waterfront plan and open space, and then all of the schools and all of these things. So it's right, a balance of all of these asks and needs of a growing neighborhood. And ultimately, in New York City, we can't go out, so we go up. And that's what, when you have these different asks of the community, it's how far up can you go that produces the best public benefit while still being in the realm of something that people don't gasp when they look up.
Del, can I?
Sure, Karen.
So there's just a couple of things. I'll go in order. Just to also what Sante was mentioning originally, as far as like the ratio of maybe requiring how much, like, okay, the 25 Kent scenario, and I think that's what's kind of like stuck in everybody's head right now, is if you look back at the original proposal of the industrial business incentive area, the IBZ special permit, that was originally M1-2, and it was originally for 14 blocks. And that potentially could have been large scale throughout the industrial business zone. And then we, scaled it to 25 Kent and then just to do a special permit for site by site. Just originally, we wanted to see how 25 Kent was gonna, produce, but unfortunately then COVID happened, and, we do know that the manufacturing portion will be together, but maybe my thing was really that it excludes the M1-1, and it looks like the Gowanus plan is really for M1-2, right? There's no M1-1 in the proposal.
There is a small area.
Okay, so is that what's the increase for the M1-1?
It would basically be another one of the contextual districts that goes to 2 FAR, but it has the same reduced parking and a little bump in the height and so on. It has a similar kind of benefit when you increase the density to that additional 1. It's just not as big as going from 2 to 4.
Okay, because in the GWIBZ, the hardship that the property owners, the manufacturers have, is the fact that if they go the M1-1, if they go to increase, it's only a floor and a half, and it's not cost effective for them to expand their manufacturing portion without having to go higher and then do commercial. It's just not cost effective. So I guess what we're trying to look at here for CB1 is the GWIBZ in particular. Now that we're getting all these special permit proposals for these sites, is one, is there any tools to limit the height, and also to require additional manufacturing to keep those manufacturing jobs? I think after that permit, we didn't go back and look at the entire GWIBZ. And the North Brooklyn Innovation Study is kind of, right now currently at a standstill. So we can't even grab tools and look at those tools because that's at a standstill. So I guess, what the community board is concerned about is really about the height and, the density of these proposals that are coming on board. And we do want to maintain those manufacturing jobs here in CV1. So we're trying to figure out how to do that, how to, balance the needs. And so if you have any suggestions or tools from maybe the Gowanus or maybe something from, the North Brooklyn Innovation Study, we would welcome any recommendations.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. That's well said.
Sure. So the M1 districts that are here on the page now are these kind of they're the more, we call them contextual M districts. They're like, they have height limits. They have the more refined gradient of densities, so you don't have to jump to 5 or 6.5 or 10 FAR if a building can get built in the 3 or 4 FAR range. So it does provide a much more contextual or medium density M district, and those are going to be proposed as part of Gowanus. I think they're not going to be, you can't just copy and paste these into Greenpoint Williamsburg. There's a lot of differences, obviously, in the neighborhoods, the street widths, access to transit, and so on. But also the way the text is being written, Gowanus is going to have a special district that creates these. They're not going to be tools that you can just copy and paste from the zoning resolution. And so, I mean, if there are areas that you guys want to take a look at in more specificity, like we want to focus on these like 10 blocks or these 12 blocks, we can sit down and go through and talk about what a vision would be like for those areas. And definitely it's something that, I mean, we're going to head into a new administration, and we can start talking about ideas and concepts that we want to put forward together in the next administration. And so happy to go if you guys want to pick out a certain area and talk about considerations, lessons learned from both North Brooklyn as well as Gowanus. And we're doing work in the Crown Heights neighborhood as well along Atlantic Avenue, which are providing some insights about this stuff. Happy to take a look and see what you think could work in different parts of the neighborhood.
I think this is Trina.
That's great.
I think the fear for us is you look at 25 Kent and you look now at Acme Fish, and that whole area is just going to become a curtain of buildings that scale, because right now the builders can go M1, M12, and jump to M15, and they're all going to go to M15 and bring their proposals back to us because there's nothing offered to them in between. And that's what we don't want.
Yeah, I hear you, and I completely agree. I think, we can talk about what would be an appropriate density and height. It doesn't have to be this exact what's being proposed in Gowanus, but I do want to talk about a specific geography with you guys, and maybe we can walk a couple of blocks and talk about what your vision is and the types of uses, and I can go into more detail about the kind of considerations that we've taken a look at for mixing typologies and so on, and we can see what happens when Gowanus enters the public review process as well, and see what comes out of that.
Yeah, I have a kind of a related question. Say there is a development that has an M12. And to get their density bonus, they're supposed to provide a community facility. And, they open up, they've been open for a few years, but they don't actually provide the facility, or they built the space, but it's not built out, and they've never had a tenant there. What is the means for enforcing that? And what are the repercussions for something like that?
Yeah, there's a couple of buildings I can think of that come to mind in Williamsburg that have built community facility space, and it's just not tenanted, and they got the FAR and the height bump. You can picture some in your mind. That is something that is facilitated both by this kind of really old, outdated balance of almost doubling the FAR for community facility uses, so it incentivizes people to take advantage of that bump, but also because of the really old and outdated sky exposure plane envelope, which allows you to create a really tall building, but setting it back. So in the proposal that's here on the screen, by creating a maximum height limit, and then really preferencing, giving more FAR for these uses than community facility, we think that would go a long way to doing that. There is nothing that requires spaces to be tenanted, though. So you can build community facility space and it can never be tenanted, and there's nothing that DOB or us or the city in general will do to say, no, you built it as community facility, you have to tenant it. And so that's always a risk. It's a little irrational to us. Why would you build space that can't be tenanted? Maybe they're doing it, to get around regulations or whatever, but nonetheless, we can't force people to tenant spaces like that.
I just had a quick question. Is there any update regarding the North Brooklyn innovation study? Or is it dead?
Not at this time. Again, as I said before, if you guys want me to come out and talk in more detail about the North Brooklyn study and some of the findings from that, or some of the recommendations, I'm happy to do that. But at this time, there isn't any proposed actions.
Okay, thank you.
I see in the chat that Kate Neplikowski and Ben Solitaire wanted to chime into the discussion. Can you let them do that, Marie?
I was unmuted. Who do you want to go first?
Well, I was contacted first by Ben, so let's let Ben come in first.
You want Ben to present first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Ben, you're unmuted.
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to assure Katie I would have let her go first, but that's fine. Whatever works.
Oh, it's fine. You were the first one I saw, so I said you. But if you prefer
That's
for
fine.
Katie to go first, that would be fine.
No, I'll go. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Dell and the committee for having this discussion, and Alex, of course, for giving a very interesting presentation over that stuff. You know, the council members involved in both of these rezonings. Both of them. We have about a third of both the North Brooklyn IBZ rezoning and about a third of the Gowanus rezoning. I just want to be really clear, they are city initiated. They're both city initiated rezonings. They've been in the works for years, as Alex said. Who's on? Somebody put themselves on mute. Somebody's making a lot of noise. But they're also vastly different. I mean, the Gowanus rezoning is a residential rezoning. It's intended to increase residential. It's about 1,000 units, up to 100 units, with mandatory inclusionary housing. And we have been very interested in maintaining the character of the neighborhood in this process. It is an arts and industrial neighborhood. So we are designing, and I don't want to say we, DCP and the administration are designing for residential and industrial around that. And these tools are interesting and they're great, and they're hopefully we could look at them like Alex said. North Brooklyn is how to maintain industrial jobs and industrial capacity, manufacturing and light and industrial. The Gowanus has not happened. It's supposed to be getting certified in January, and then go through that's the beginning of their ULURP process. As far as I know, and I guess Alex, you basically said that the North Brooklyn is not happening. It's not going to happen in this administration. There were differences, and Alex and I have talked a lot about manufacturing. I guess we had several conversations over the last couple of years, which have been great about manufacturing and jobs in Brooklyn. But there was a difference of opinion between the council members' offices and DCP on some of the issues, and I think Evergreen also, but of how to exactly promote manufacturing in that rezoning. So after many meetings, we ended up not going anywhere, and then COVID hit, and that'll probably be it for this administration.
Do you feel comfortable telling us some of the differences of opinions?
Yeah, I mean, the primary one, and again, most of the council members, the area that is in the council members district is honestly, it's mostly Broadway stages, and some other manufacturing and auto body shops and things like that. So a lot of this was in Councilmember Verdoso's district. I think one of the biggest was how we should allow for nightlife and retail, and how much space. There was definitely some concern about, in the Williamsburg Greenpoint IBZ, we have a lot of nightclubs, and we have Brooklyn Bowl, and we have hotels and all that there aren't actually industrial manufacturing things, and we wanted to make sure that didn't happen in North Brooklyn. And that was sort of the biggest one. There were a few other sticking points, but again, they were mostly in Verdoso's district, so I'd have to remember what they were. But I think we all were in agreement about parking being reduced, parking requirements being reduced, and we were on the beginning of talking about environmental impacts. We were not concerned in those to provide artistic spaces other than film and media. Film and TV production, but because it's not. I mean, there is some there, but it's not the way that the Gowanus is. There are still, like Alex said, in the Gowanus mix, this would be this sort of unique use group setting for Gowanus that would include the arts, and some other uses that would be there because that's what the neighborhood calls for. I mean, hopefully you can look at the Gowanus. Essentially, it's like the 2005 Williamsburg Greenpoint rezoning. It's a major rezoning of a neighborhood. It's the biggest rezoning in the Bloomberg and the De Blasio administration. But I think they've learned a lot, and I think we're going to escape a lot of what we did. There's a lot of opposition to it, and there's a lot of people for it. I would say it has a little ways to go before it passes, though. I think you'll hear the administration say when it happens, not if. But they are very different entities, and I think in North Brooklyn, it was we want to maintain manufacturing, and to Sante's point, I think, and I'm not opining on any particular project, but in order for manufacturing to stay, it's so expensive to build in the city and land that you need to offset that with commercial space, and what the exact proportions of that. But you can't, nobody's going to go build like Acme. They're not going to go build a fish factory by themselves. They need to have an offset, and if the proposal is more than what they need, that's for us to, or you guys, not us, you guys to figure out. And if it's the right amount, then that's that. But we do want to maintain those jobs. They're not, there are still ones that are good for English as a second language and non-college degree, though they are less, as Alex said. But we want to make sure that jobs are here for people to have. So that's all.
So Ben, I just want to clarify. So were some of the discussions about maintaining some kind of a balance between nightclubs and the nightlife versus maintaining buildings to be used for actual, job creating industries and manufacturing?
Yeah,
in North Brooklyn, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't want to have the 20,000 square foot dance hall, next to the manufacturing uses. We felt that was, and Alex, I know we went back and forth a lot about the actual square footage of those spaces, but yes, we wanted, we love Brooklyn Bowl. We love nightclubs, but they've got a lot of places to go, and they don't need to be where they don't provide the same type of job quality.
Yeah, sure.
And they do provide good jobs. I'm not saying that either, but it's not the same.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So Katie wanted to speak.
Okay, thanks. And thank you, Dell and the committee for having this. I think it's so important, and to community planning for being here. I might be all over the place, but I'll try to do that fast. I think we have, needless to say, like a tidal wave coming at us. Right now, there's really no reassurance that this is going to stay industrial, the business zone. Look at Acme, it's mostly office space and commercial space. I mean, there's no guarantee of, there's no added manufacturing. There's more to be said about that. But just a little story, when it was Brooklyn Bazaar, that's now ADO BMW, after they moved out, there was a number on the building, and I called it. I said, hi, I'm interested. And he said, this is the zone. I asked the zoning, and I said, oh, but da-da-da. And he said, don't worry, that'll be upzoned in a few years. So this land is going for more because people are speculating that they'll be able to upzone. And therefore, it is more expensive to build because they've paid more for the land with the speculation. I think a lot of this stuff is Greek to me, actually, of understanding the zoning and such. But I do think that we really need to take the bull by the horns. I think this is a great step, but I think that we should take Alex up on looking at an area. I think that we should get back together with Reynoso's office, who's been so much in the forefront of industrial business zoning plans, and with Councilman Levin's office, to ensure that there's going to be no hotels, no more offices, no self-storage, and that there should be no living lofts and no residential, and there should be no, it's just got to be stopped in its tracks right now. We have to get ahead of the part rather than following behind it every time it comes up community board, and then we're kind of pushed to the wall and we get something like what Acme is in every single lot. So I would just really, encourage that besides this meeting, which is such a fantastic first step, that there also be a task force created by community board that has city planning, the council offices, and interested community board members, residents, at least to have 3 additional meetings so that we can really figure this out, so that we have a really comprehensive plan, maybe something. And I'd also like to say, I really echo what Sante said about having some way to have small artist spaces, somehow make it a creative zone. They're the first ones who come into these spaces, and then they're not here anymore because it's unaffordable. And so, and Trina, also, and Karen, I think everybody's kind of saying the same things. I'd also like to know what happened with Acme. I'd like to know what borough president in the hearing, what they decided. The height was just a recommendation, but is there going to be the IDA and the absolute, the restriction on it ever changing from industrial? Anyway, I don't want to put that up front, but I hope that we can have a task force out or something like that.
Well, two things. First of all, I don't know if Richard Barrick wants to say anything, but he is here. I don't know if he wants
I'll
to.
talk if you want me to.
I don't want all my other comments to get lost. I'm not saying that.
And the other thing I will say before I give the floor to you, Richard, is I think, to me, one of the most exciting things that has come out of tonight's meeting is the idea that we can work now. We can just get together, our committee and people from the community who want to work with us can start talking about what areas we want to look at, what we want for those areas, and city planning and our council members will then be able to work with us. And I think to me, that's really exciting. But anyway, Richard, did you want to mention something about Acme? Or about anything else that you've heard tonight? Richard Barrick.
Not part of manufacturing districts as of right. The heights from that sky exposure plane that Alex showed, for the most part, even office uses are not going to reach that high. Acme, because they're only building higher on, let's say, more than half the site, that's an atypical thing where they're forfeiting height, so therefore they have to have height in other parts of the site to achieve what they're seeking, right? But for the most part, those loft districts that Alex showed for Gowanus, by default, most manufacturing developments, and they're not going to be manufacturing, just manufacturing zones, are not going to be as high as what happened at, say, the hotel that had the community facility that they decided not to try to lease out, I suppose. And their only recourse in that hotel is to go to BSA to seek hardship if they can make a case to occupy that space. Otherwise, unless they could move an action before the Department of City Planning, that would be a discretionary review for the community board council members as well. So you're not going to see unique situations really for height, right? There's going to be very limited situations to see height. You're going to more likely see the bulkier buildings, but the key issue in the M districts is going to be, do you have the district that requires the parking or don't you? Because if you require the parking, you're probably not really going to have development because the economics just are going to cancel each other out. So you're going to get more towards the loft type of developments. The thing is, M zoning does not require manufacturing use. It has some limitations on retail, and also geography is going to affect whether retail is viable, but office development is always going to be the highest and best use when the office market is strong enough to induce that. So that special permit for 25 Kent was an example to leverage something where we could guarantee manufacturing related uses. And the Acme Fish special permit, if that is adopted, because they're asking for zoning, it may provide a vehicle for the council to guarantee something. So that's still be determined. The borough president has not issued a recommendation to date on Acme. We're still working on other projects that are due sooner, so we really haven't gotten into it. We're still open to take additional testimony on Acme, and I'll stop right now.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you. I know that, Alex, we also asked you to to talk to us about the new proposed zoning for hotels. So I was thinking maybe we could move on to that. Because that's been a bane of our existence.
Yeah, a while back, the architects for NYCHA posted in the chat that they asked that we potentially provide a letter of support for their design with modifications.
So should we take that up after we finish this discussion? We'll go back to it.
Well, I mean, it's up to the committee, but it seems to me that the committee felt that it was too premature to give that letter of support, and we're asking them to come back next month.
We were able to actually, we dug into some of the details, and we do have a substantial amount of the information that would be needed, we think. And the other items that were being requested, they're certainly welcome to be included in a letter for modification.
Well, let me. I have to cut you off now because we're doing this the second. We're doing now the city, the discussion with city planning. So I think we'll have to put that off to the end of the meeting.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thanks. So maybe we can move on to the hotel.
Thank you.
Hotel proposed rezoning.
Sure. And
thank you.
Just quickly, there's a citywide text amendment being proposed right now that would create a new special permit for hotels in all C districts, commercial districts, and MX districts, mixed use districts. There's already currently a special permit in M1 districts. So this would be expanded citywide. If you're familiar with the environmental review process, before a large application like this, there's something called a draft scope of work, which is developed and released just before a public scoping meeting. That draft scope of work has been released the end of December, and there's a public scoping meeting being proposed for January 22nd. It's at 2 p.m. And then there's going to be a window after that will also accept written testimony. That just is to basically signify where we are in the process of the environmental review. Generally speaking, to go from the public scoping meeting to certification when it enters public review process, it's multiple months, 3-6 more months. So there's not a written text zoning text application yet, but I can tell you just at a high level, the way the special permit works is that as proposed, it would basically apply all over the city. It would apply to all hotels, motels, botels, all of that. Anybody that wants to build a new hotel would have to then apply for this special permit that goes through the public review process. So it goes to the community board, the borough president, the city planning commission, and the city council. There would be a set of findings that would be associated with it. That would the applicant would have to meet those findings or identify how they meet those findings, which would be based on the types of surrounding uses, the neighborhood character, both the safety and amenities for both hotel guests as well as the surrounding area residents, traffic and things like that. I'm being very high level because there is no text yet for me to describe to you, but this is at the high level. And so that's basically what will be happening over the next few months. And I can try and answer any questions you have about that. And if I can't answer it, I'm more than happy to take it back. We're going to come out to all the community boards in Brooklyn and across the city over the next couple of months and provide you with information as we develop it and get input on it. But I want to say I really appreciate you reaching out and asking about it now at this point. And I can try to answer any questions you may have now.
Okay, and then you will come to the full community board, right? Okay,
Absolutely.
great. Okay, any questions?
I have a question, but not about the hotel. Going back to our previous discussion, just when you consider that the area that we've been talking about between 25 Kent and the Acme site, that it straddles the front of Bushwick Inlet Park. And Bushwick Inlet Park is completely unfunded. And there are going to be a series of buildings that are development sites that are going to come to the community board and ask for a ULURP. Is there any way the community can ask for some of the funding for Bushwick Inlet Park or something substantial? Is there something that can be built into when we talk about the rezoning or the possible zoning tools for that area, where there can be some mechanism to help fund the park? Is that a city planning issue, or am I in the wrong department? Yes.
That's an interesting question. We generally tie open space like incentives to on-site. The technical term for that is a density ameliorating, meaning the open space on site would ameliorate the additional density provided. It's common in central business districts like in downtown Brooklyn and Manhattan. Off-site improvements, I don't want to speak out of turn here. Let me check and see if we have examples in the zoning of off-site open space. Obviously, we have it when there's an environmental impact. There's a hook that we can require as part of an environment if there's an environmental impact. But a separate funding mechanism within zoning, I don't think we have that tool. But I want to ask our central division to get back to you on that.
Well, it's just the value of these properties is going to go up when that park gets built, and it would be nice if they could participate in the building of the park. Or not nice.
Yeah, agreed.
If there was some way to legislate that would be
it's really creative thinking, and I want to get back to you on that because it is an interesting way to think about it. I will posit that the intent, at least in the special permit, the IBIA, the intent here is that the additional value would be captured and put into creating the industrial required space.
Right.
And all that said, it's a novel mechanism. We're trying it out. COVID is going to kind of throw a wrench into how successful it is. But that the intent of it was that the additional value created by the commercial office space or the retail was going to be sunk back into creating the industrial space. But again, I appreciate the question, and I want to get back with a more comprehensive answer on that.
And is the tenanting of the industrial space like the tenanting of a community facility? Is there a mechanism for making sure? I mean, is that Because at 25 Kent, I don't think they have an industrial tenant.
Right, and so the quick answer is no. There is no requirement for the space to be tenanted. There is a mechanism that they will have to follow up on if they keep that space vacant. They're going to have to identify how much they're asking for that and why, how long it's been vacant, and there's going to be a little bit of a mechanism within that to peek inside why. But there is no requirement at this time to keep the space tenanted.
When does that mechanism get triggered? That building's been there for a while.
I believe it's either when it gets TCOs or it's tenanted, or after I want to say 36 months of it being vacant. After it gets the TCO and it's vacant, then they have to follow up. I think it's 36 months. I need to check the text again. But there's a time period that it takes a long time for this space to come online, and so they have to provide some feedback about that. But there is a window that acknowledges that it takes a long time to lease up space.
I want to add that there was a leasing announcement about, I don't know, 8-9 months ago, just before COVID, of a garment firm relocating from Manhattan to 25 Kent. So I don't know the status of that lease. I don't know if it stalled or if it fell apart because of COVID, but that was put out there that there would be a garment tenant.
That's my knowledge as well. I think they're fitting the space out, but I don't think they've received the TCOs or they've moved in yet. But that's my understanding, is that it's still moving forward.
Del, I just wanted to point out that Asher from Councilman Reynoso's office put in the chat that he's happy to add on to Ben's comments on the industry study. And then there's a Corey Canton who's asking, have they considered the size of hotels in this change in application process? For example, a 10-room hotel is very different compared to a 200-unit hotel.
So Alex, maybe you can answer that, and then I would ask Marie to give Asher Freeman the opportunity to speak.
Sure. So on the unit size or the size of the hotel, it has not yet been considered if there will be a cutoff. And so I'm taking notes during this, and I can bring that back. But that's the type of questioning, or if you have suggestions on if there should be a unit size limit or square footage limit, that's the type of thing that we can get input on and bring that back to discuss how that could be included in the citywide discussion.
Thank you. So Marie, can you get Asher in on this?
He just has to unmute himself.
Oh, okay. Asher, you just have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Great. Thanks, everyone, and Happy New Year. So I just wanted to kind of pick up from Ben's comments earlier on the North Brooklyn industrial study. Yeah, I mean, he's correct that our main disagreement with city planning was over the size and scope and location of nightlife primarily. Currently, the zoning here is almost meaningless in terms of being industrial zoning. The office, nightclubs, all that kind of stuff. We have a nightclub that is a full city block in our district, and we certainly don't think that that is an appropriate place for that. It's dangerous, frankly, for people coming in and out of there at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and it interferes with the industrial businesses that are around there. We think there's no place for that kind of business in the IBZ, and I think there's a fundamental philosophical disagreement between us and city planning about restricting uses. They tend to want to leave uses as unrestricted as possible to make sure something gets built, and for them that's a success. For us, we want to do real long-term planning, and we want to make sure that uses are restricted and that we're developing exactly the type of uses that we want to see in that area. This has been a long-standing commitment from Councilmember Reynoso to work on industrial retention, and that remains a commitment. So I'm really happy that the community board is holding this hearing, and we want to be partners in that. And so in any way that we can be helpful in this work, please let us know. We're not giving up on the industrial study, and we want to keep pushing that. But we want it to be really about industrial retention and not about bringing in, Facebook and Amazon to do tech offices in that area.
All right, this is exciting. This will give us a really good and concrete direction to move in. Thank you. All right. I don't know if there are any more questions. It is getting late. I don't want to just start repeating ourselves here, and I do want to have a few minutes for the committee members to just sort of get a chance among ourselves to just have a direction for what we want to move to for the next meeting. And also, Trina, you may want to revisit the Williamsburg Houses before we leave. So can we move on to both of those two things, unless one of the members has another question? I think we can say thank you to community planning and to Richard Barrack and to our council members for their participation, and maybe we can, I don't know if the committee members want to just go back to the Williamsburg Houses, or if you want to just finish this discussion among ourselves and then do Williamsburg Houses. Any suggestions?
I agree with the latter.
Say it again.
I said I agree with the latter. We should discuss the presentation that Alex just did, and the Gowanus and the hotel situation, and then we can deal with the Williamsburg Houses landmark issue if Trina agrees.
That makes sense to me. It's fine with me. That's okay. All right. So
and I just wanted to thank Alex for the presentation and all the information that you provided. You did a great job. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree.
Actually, I'm kind of a broken record, but I'll say it again. Alex, you and everyone at City Planning has always been so responsive and willing to come and talk to us and work with us. And as are you, Richard Barrack, and our council members. So I think this is, I thank you all. Thank you. So it seems to me, let me just start with saying, I think that we can all sit back and think about what we've discussed tonight, and when we reconvene, or even we can text each other or email each other, I think we can now think about and talk about what really are do we have specific areas that we would like to concentrate on? Do we have goals that we can agree with among each other as to what we would like to work on with city planning and with our council people and with the borough president's office? If people have some thoughts, specific thoughts tonight, that's great. But there was a lot discussed tonight, and I didn't really think that we would come to a conclusion. I just thought this was this would be a meeting where we could get a sense of what is going on, what's available to us, so that we can now start working towards some very specific goals. But again, if you have some thoughts tonight, then please feel free.
Are you asking for geography, or are you asking for different sets of blocks that we're thinking about?
Well, I think geography, what's the difference between geography and
I mean, do we want to look at the area along the Newtown Creek as in addition to the area along the waterfront or along the river?
What I would ask in that respect then is to please look at the North Brooklyn Innovation Study, which City Planning has come to the board several times regarding that study. I would ask that everybody please look at it, and then we could have a discussion on it. As far as the Greenpoint Williamsburg, which they're not studying, I think, again, look at those other links that Alex had sent us. And I think it should be both geographic and what our wants are. Maybe we could reconvene the next, meeting once. I really feel that the committee should do a little bit of homework and read those studies.
So what's the best site to look at for the North Brooklyn study?
I think Alex sent the links, and if not, then I could send those links.
Okay, thanks.
Do you mind if I interject? I can distribute the links to both the Gowanus plan and the North Brooklyn study, and I can give that to Marie if that works for everybody.
That would be great. I saw the Gowanus. I know you sent the link to the Gowanus. I just somehow didn't notice. I didn't see the North Brooklyn study link. But if you could send that to Marie, that's great. And then we can, I think you're right. We should all look at it.
If you could do it now, Alex, you can put it in the chat.
Oh, great. I'll do that now.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
Great.
Sorry.
I had more specific thoughts. I think it's really great what's been out there so far. And I just want to say again, thank you, Alex, and your team for the presentation and discussion tonight, and again, being available to us in the community on various issues related to the planning of the neighborhood and beyond, and Richard as well, and our council people. What more specifically is in the 14 block area, the incentivized zone, what's come up is the trigger for the height bonuses. The as of right bonus for an M12, if you have a community facility, you get the Williamsville Hotel. And then with the text amendment, if you provide a percentage of light manufacturing, then you get 25 Kent. Just to name names, the Williamsville has been open for 4 years, and they have not tenanted a community facility tenant. So I think, but I don't know what to do about that, because any of those property owners in the incentivized area as of right could potentially do that, and without, I assume, bypassing the community board, they could just go. Correct me wrong, Alex. That just is something they would apply for through city planning and would not go through community review through the community board. But I guess my concern is that, there's no enforcement mechanism, and the whole idea, as Willis mentioned during the Acme Fish hearing and afterwards, I think it was Willis during the full board meeting, that the whole idea is we thwarted the whole passing a text amendment for the full 14 blocks. We're going to allow 25 Kent to go through and see how it played out. But meanwhile, we've approved 2 more text amendments, 12 Franklin and 103 North 13th. I'm just thinking maybe, I've heard that there are more of those applications in the pipeline, that we really, consider our original assertion of waiting to see what happens, before we, give the Midas touch to these future applications. I just, at the same time, I want to see, job creation flourish in the neighborhood, but, balance of as much as possible between commercial and manufacturing. But so that was just, one kind of thought concern came to mind.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. We make these conditions in good faith, and then as it turns out, we have no way of being certain that they're going to be carried out. And so that is something that I think we can very specifically work with our council people on, and the borough president. And I guess city planning too. They may be the councilman or the council members of the and borough president might be more involved with enforcement. I don't know, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I also want to point out that one of the issues with the 14 blocks were the M11 surrounding the 14 blocks did not have equal opportunity. And that was an issue that our office raised. And if you leave them to be, then all they're going to be is eventually retail fodder serving the office buildings that happen in the M12 special permits, because at M11, the highest value will eventually be being Starbucks and whatever else. So we really thought the M11 needed to get more opportunity to leverage permanent industrial space.
Exactly.
Yep. I think many of us felt that way. All right, well, good. I think we should all just let you know that Alex did put in the chat the links to the North Brooklyn study and the Gowanus study. And I would recommend that we all look at those links, click on those links and familiarize ourselves with these studies. All right. Is there anything else that we need to discuss before we can turn back to the Williamsburg Houses? Again, it's 9:15. I don't want to just,
Yeah, just one last thing is just, what Katie Naptar's kind of threw out there, and maybe something to consider, is idea of forming a task force, like or an ad hoc committee or subcommittee out of land use to delve deeper into this, if it's maybe beyond the scope of just the land use committee. I don't know. As we get more specific, or can help nail down what we really want to focus on.
Sure, that would be something we'd have to discuss further in terms of who has the authority to do that, right? But yeah, but it's certainly a good idea. Thanks, Katie. All right. Oh, one more thing before we all disband. I've been trying to make it very clear that our land use committee meets regularly the first Monday of every month, unless it's a holiday. And because I know that we all welcome people from the community coming and participating. It's what helps us to be able to know what people want, get a good, decent sense of what the needs are. Now, it was brought to my attention that there's and Marie, I can ask you about this, that there's a way that I can get that posted on the website as a save the day kind of thing. Like I understand we can't.
You can bring this up at the executive committee meeting.
Okay.
I cannot answer your question.
Okay, fine. I will bring it up at the executive committee meeting. Okay. Just so you all know that I personally would like to be able to at least post on our website when our meetings are going to be. If we can't post the agenda until it's completely finalized, then at least I would like to be able to use that save the date tool that's available to us. So I'll bring it up. Okay. Anyway, moving on to the Williamsburg houses.
Okay, moving back to the Williamsburg.
Back to the
houses.
Williamsburg houses. You're right. Sorry.
So I didn't see the posting in the chat. Does one of the, or Matthew, do you want to tell us what the change is?
What's changed in the past hour or two? Yes. Sorry again for being indecisive before. We looped up really quickly after we spoke, and we did find some of the answers. For example, window shades will be included with the design, which was one of the requests. We did find, what's that?
Screens.
Screen, sorry. Brian, maybe I should let you do it. Maybe I'm a little tired.
No problem. So yeah, we were able to get the general contractor, the installer, window manufacturer on the phone, and we went back through some of our records as well. So as Matt just mentioned, window screens are included. I know the window corner, or the corner window, was probably what the most critical component here, and one that had a question. We have confirmed that it's going to be mounted approximately 3.5 inches back from the outside edge, give or take a 1/2 inch, and we can't give you any more information than that until, you know, they go through the installation, and it's going to vary. But that's plus or minus where that corner is going to be. That corner is not going to basically change from that installation. And regarding the thickness of the corner mullion, basically we're currently reducing the aluminum corner 4 inches, even at that 10-inch mark. If you know, I'm using plus or minus right now. If that 4.5 plus 4.5 or so, or 4 7/8 corner. So we're reducing that right now significantly by about that 4 inches more than what is currently there. So we are opening it up. We are working with the window manufacturer, but they don't see it getting significantly tighter than where we are on that current drawing. They said it's plus or minus, you know, a 1/2 inch or something like that. It's really not going to get significantly different. We also just checked our notes regarding LPC, and they were actually, and I apologize for not being clear earlier, they were pushing us to get some type of letter from you today, and that was sort of the reason why they asked us to separate out the windows, so we can then, or they can have some type of response from the community board. We can then go to the public hearing for LPC at the commissioner level, and then they can, you know, dig through it as well at the commissioner level. And they wanted to proceed forward on the windows so that after that we can continue with the entire scope that I mentioned previously.
What is the date of your LPC hearing? Because we can't give you a letter today. What we are is the committee, and we would bring a recommendation from the committee to the full board, which meets next Tuesday. And so you wouldn't have a letter till after next Tuesday.
Yeah, you're correct in sort of the procedure.
But when is it that you need the letter by?
At your next board meeting, if this could be, the letter could be discussed and formalized for LPC.
One trouble I see, and I don't, again, committee members let me know too. I mean, I don't mean to be hard ass, but we don't see a drawing with these things. You're coming back to us and telling us that this is how it exists. You didn't have this information when you came to us originally. I think it's important for us to see a drawing and not just, or maybe we can make a recommendation. Maybe we can put that, acknowledge that there was no drawing in the recommendation.
That's what I would respectfully request, if that's okay with you, that you would maybe put that in the letter of recommendation, that those stipulations, you know, dimension the overhang on the corner window and provide the smallest possible profile on that corner window and provide the screen. Because I feel like those are the 3 critical elements that about.
Yeah, I think the other part was in terms of the corner windows. we didn't feel that in the next month there would be substantially new information. This has been, so the goal has been to reduce, or not to reduce, but to have the offset sort of maximized, and there isn't going to be a substantial change in information between now and
There won't
next
be a
month's
final
meeting.
drawing there.
No, there will be maybe more substantial drawings, but in terms of the information that was provided tonight, other than the screens, there wasn't going to be a change in that information.
So Landmarks would make their decision based on what you have and not want to see a final drawing?
It's not true. It's not possible. Landmark want to see very specific detail, especially the corner window, and we don't have it. You asking us personally, I don't know what my fellow member feel, but personally, I feel this is an important project. I feel it requires detailed drawings, and you asking us to give you permission and write you a letter based on what? This is about architectural drawings, details. We need details about the mullion. And I believe we're missing the opportunity to probably propose some still window, which are very important. And the screen, the operable, there are so many. Without drawings, we cannot make proper evaluation. And you say that just we are going to have some possible reduction of a profile. What that means, instead of 4 inch and 7/8, is going to be 4 inch and 1/4. That's, to me, is not a satisfying answer. You know, really, I have to say clearly.
What do other committee members think?
I think that just based on the drawings and the schematics that they provided so far, this kind of restoration of these windows is going to be so much better than what was originally there. It's just, leaps and bounds in the scale of the project. And I hear what you're saying. We usually demand this of other applicants, generally smaller projects. But I feel like it'd be proper to make a recommendation, but list out all of our concerns and recommendations, even our maybe protests. That if you're going to do it. But that's my feeling.
I have a question. I'm sorry. I have a question. I haven't spoken much tonight. I've been more in listening mode. How much tenant engagement, and I do understand that there has been some tenant engagement with the Williamsburg Houses residents, maybe one meeting or maybe not. How much tenant engagement have you guys conducted? And what do the residents say in terms of the construction and the windows and the screens that have been mentioned? And have they come back with any recommendations or suggestions? I mean, we're the board members, but we're not the residents. And I think that the residents have to speak loudest.
Yes, no, I totally agree. So in terms of resident engagement, I will be honest. Typically what happens in these projects is right when we are designated for the site, we start tenant engagement right away. Due to COVID, NYCHA had some concerns on how resident engagement was taking place portfolio-wide, and we were unable to start resident engagement until later in the process. I actually sent a packet of our community engagement. I can provide a link to the materials that have been provided to residents. Our first tenant meeting, like I said previously, was last month. We have another one coming up on the 7th and another one coming up at the end of the month. We have been working with the TA very closely throughout the time. Unfortunately, a lot of our engagement has had to be through mailers, through packets that are handed out. We can't meet with people as face-to-face as we like. And the first meeting, a lot of what came to get to that point was making sure that we had the technology to do this fairly and equitably. We didn't want to leave out people who may not understand English and Spanish. We have a Chinese population at the site, as well as a Russian population at the site that we had to make sure we were fully addressing. but I can post the materials that have been provided to residents. And the design of the windows, a lot of the input that went into making sure that, you know, we have these historic looking windows, but that they had the functionality of what they had existing to provide air conditioning, to be ease of opening, things like that, is based on conversations with the TA, as well as based on our history with working with NYCHA residents. But yes, community engagement is probably the most important piece of all of these projects.
I have a question. Is it possible for you guys to have those drawing prepared for our next board meeting, so we may consider give the recommendation to entire committee board to approve this project?
That's a great idea. Next Tuesday, if before our meeting next Tuesday evening, we could have a drawing that shows the things that you just told us would be part of the.
Yes.
I'm very uncomfortable with this, Trina. I've worked with the Williamsburg Houses for many years. I'm talking 30-something years. And this is not how they operate. This is not how the Tenants Association works. It's a very, very long-lived community that's there. Generations living there. I don't see that engagement.
Okay.
And I can't see why this is being rushed so quickly.
Absolutely.
This way. This is not, it's, what they're asking for us to give them approval, and we don't have the ability to give the approval without working with the tenants, or at least drawing them into some kind of a conversation. And I still don't understand why this is being done. I mean, this is not a conversation that we had at all about this particular development going into this type of cooperative management. I think that is key. I don't know why this is rushing so quickly, especially in COVID. My experience with LPC is not this. So somebody else is looking for this to be rushed through. This is not something that we need to rush.
Absolutely, Maria, I agree with you. And I want to say something very important for who is not aware how the process works with LPC, that especially windows, if the window is accurate and the detail are provided accurately, they approve the staff level beyond the scale of this project. You know, the fact they are coming here at our meeting is because, you know, we're going outside completely or anything that the LPC will approve. You know, and personally, technically, is not correct and shouldn't happen. And beyond the fact that why this rush? Something so important on a large scale, why this rush?
Something, I just want to clarify something for the record, that this package was reviewed at the staff level. They gave us the example of the other project, the Beaux-Arts building. They said this has made great progress. They thought it was very nice. We did provide the majority of the details. We have not provided the corner detail, correct. And they said, very good, you're now approved to proceed at the community board level. So I just want to be clear about that.
I believe we should do this with time. And we should do this with a proper detail, because normally I know how this works precisely. You know, you do precise drawing and precise detail. It's so important. There is other detail. There is another thickness as a window sill. You adding a layer of stone or concrete on the window sill. There's so many other things which I was waiting to see together with the proper drawings. But let's say that we are focusing on this corner, of which I believe we should know what exact dimension at the original profile. I believe it was about 1 inch. You are proposing 4 inch and 7/8. Even if you reduce it ½ inch, we still definitely adding other 4 inches more each side of the corner, which I believe it's completely historically not correct.
So, I mean, I don't want to keep anyone too long, but, you know, we figured we'd make the request. Obviously, you know, this is up to the board. We can provide the drawing by next Tuesday. And actually, I know we have been doing a lot of elected engagement with Davila's office and the other electeds in the area. But I know I sent, I think it was Maria on the community board email. Is that correct? I sent her at least our opening package. And so if there's someone, I see Maria Vieira speaking. The community board email, the CB1 email.
It was Marie. You probably sent it to Marie.
Yes, to Marie. Thank you, Maria.
Which was sent to all the committee members.
Okay, great. So I think maybe just in light of the other comments regarding sort of transparency and involving the community board, that is definitely something we want to make sure is rectified. I know we've been having engagement with the TA, with the residents, and with the electeds, but we can definitely make sure that the community board is more looped into exactly what is going on. So that is something we can discuss how to do more going forward.
Before we can vote on the windows and the LPC issue, I think we need to know more about the total renovation project itself and the community engagement, which I know is not what you wanted to hear tonight. But I think if you come back with that information as well as the final drawing, we would be happy to pick it up again at our next land use meeting.
I actually, this is Dell speaking, I don't think it would be fair to the full board to hit them with the fact that we as a committee didn't feel ready to vote on anything, and based on the idea that, well, then they're going to come with drawings, and so the full board will have to then look at the drawings. I mean, they rely on our having a preliminary, look at things and giving them some kind of suggestion or direction. And also I am concerned about, when I asked about whether they knew what the community wanted with respect even just to the screens, there wasn't even any kind of a knowledge of that. And frankly, here it is, the end of the meeting. We gave plenty of time to this application at the beginning. Now we're revisiting it at the end. And I think that overall, sure, I agree, Steve, that this is going to be better than what they have. But I think that the committee and the tenants have the right and deserve to have more of a sense of what's going on. We always ask for pictures. We always do. Why loosen up on that now? And we've asked them to come back next month. I don't think that's unreasonable.
It's Karen. I think I agree, and I think we should stick with the original, that it needs to come back to us in February with a full finalized plan.
So the only thing, and of course we deferred to you guys. We figured that we would make the ask regardless. But Landmarks did request that we submit the window package separately from the rest of the site. I'm not sure if that's something that we should discuss with Landmarks, what your guidance was on submitting it as one, or how we should proceed with that piece.
Well, maybe if we had just some general idea of what the scope of what you're planning to do is, then we might have a better sense of how much to demand of you in terms of the details on the windows. I don't know. I don't know.
I have an entire presentation. I don't, it's up to you. I can go through it very quickly if you wanted. I mean,
No, please. It's not right.
Not right
It's
now.
not, no, we're not going to start
I
all over
understand
again.
that. That's, I
Dell?
don't want to do that to you. I
Yes.
know.
Dell, you can make a recommendation that they have to come back. I mean, you don't have to give them a yes or no answer
Correct.
to LPC. I've dealt with them all these years.
Yes.
You can put down like, we're not happy with this, or we need to explore more on this. They don't, they're just asking that they get feedback from the board. Well, this is our feedback.
What do you think, Trina? Do you feel comfortable writing up that kind of a report?
Yeah, I do feel comfortable writing up the report.
And are we all okay with that? You know what? I'm not going to ask for a roll call on this. I don't want to be told now, we don't have enough people. Does anyone object to Trina's writing up a report recommending that we recommend that they come back because we have questions of the materials they're using and all of the things that Sante raised, and we are concerned about whether there's been sufficient tenant participation, and I'm sure you have all the other things written down, Trina. Does anyone have objections to that?
No.
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 Dale?
Yes.
I know I spoke a lot, but I want to say 2 words to close. Very important for everybody, so we are aware that in a landmark project, even if the window were changed in the 80s, they were double hung. I don't know which year they did that. Definitely they did before it was actually declared landmark.
Yeah.
The moment you remove those double hung windows in the building or any building, the moment you remove something is not historic appropriate, when you redo that, you have to refer to the historical window. There is no option to go with double hung. You have to look at the original window, of which we have precise record because the project was a big public project and we have record of everything.
Yeah,
so there is not much option. And actually, that's all. So I know the idea was vented. Oh, it's better than before. What we had before. No, the only reference we have historically is the original window. It's not what we have now. Okay, that's all.
Okay. Well, with that, I think we can conclude our meeting.
We really appreciate you letting us come back. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. And I sent out the initial resident package that went out. But if anyone does want to touch base with me, I think by me sending that, maybe you have my email address. I'd love to get more feedback on how we can keep the community board more in the loop in terms of the resident engagement.
That would be great. And in our report, I'll acknowledge that you did come back with the information, and the report will reflect what happened tonight.
Well, I just want to add, the whole discussion of the full renovation just brings up the whole issue of how it's being done, how it's being funded, the partnership. That's something beyond this committee. Like it should be brought up, I don't know, with the housing committee or I don't know what. But I feel like it's like an investigation. It's something we should investigate as a board.
Is Rabbi still in? I know he was here earlier. He's gone. He's the chair of the housing committee. The whole time I was sitting here thinking about perhaps having a meeting or inviting some of the TA members from Williamsburg Houses to our next meeting, because I just don't see that they had any participation or any say in what's happening. And I do realize that this is a red, and I know how it goes. Yeah, I just don't, I think that just like everyone else said, it's being rushed, and I understand it's COVID, but just like everything else was put on pause, why is this being rushed where the engagement with the tenants has been put on pause, regardless of the reasons, because there are hindrances regarding ability to have access to internet or whatever. And if that's the case, then they should have slowed down, because it's just inexcusable to move forward with this type of plan that it impacts so many people without letting them know what's happening under their roofs and letting them have some say. So yeah.
If it would be helpful, we can invite Miss McLam on the next call as well.
Sure.
Good.
Who is she?
She's the TA president.
The current TA. She's the current. Used to be Betty Jones, wasn't it, Marie?
That was a while ago.
She still lives there, though. She still lives
a
there.
while ago.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, these people have been there for years, for decades.
Well, I guess the bottom line is they deserve to be treated just like everybody else.
Agreed. 100%. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. You guys are the greatest, really.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.